Podemos começar, Manu?
Oi, meu nome é Samara Evelyn, tenho 20 anos e eu moro em Itaúsu, uma cidade no interior de Goiás. Por ser cidade do interior, acho que se a gente não tivesse tanto esses acessos à internet, complicaria muito mais. Eu falo isso por questão própria aqui dentro de casa mesmo. Tudo que você precisar fazer, desde um RG até, vamos supor, alguma coisa de energia, água, essas coisas, você tinha que ir na cidade mais perto. No caso, aí em Rumas, que é onde eu estudo e trabalho. Na minha carreira, eu utilizo muito o site do Gov e o do meu INSS. E se eu não conseguisse esse acesso pela internet, eu teria que estar todo dia lá na porta do meu INSS para poder resolver pendência. Uma coisa que era muito burocrática, muito demorada, hoje em dia eu tenho na palma da minha mão. Desde sempre, né? Quando surgiu a internet, eu sempre usei tanto para diversão como também para trabalho.
Boa tarde. Nos encaminhando, então, para a última etapa desse evento
We are about to resume the last
Teremos agora
stage
o painel
of
temático
our
2,
celebration.
transformação
We are going to
digital no
have
setor
our
público,
second
que irá
panel,
retratar as
number
mudanças
2,
provocadas pela
digital
adoção de
transformation in
tecnologias
the public
digitais no
sector,
setor público,
which will
bem como
address
as
all
perspectivas
the
futuras
changes
de
addressed
transformação
by
da prestação de
technological
serviços públicos
adoptions
e a
in
relação
the
entre
public
cidadãos
sector
e
and the
governos
relationship
mediada pelas
between
tecnologias
citizens,
digitais.
governments,
Para
throughout
moderar o
digital
painel, convido ao
technologies.
palco senhora
And to be
Manuela
the
Maia Ribeiro,
moderator of
que é
this panel,
coordenadora de pesquisa
Mrs. Manuela
científica no
Maia,
Cetic.br.
who is the
Bem-vinda,
coordinator for
Manuela.
ICT's Cetic.br. Welcome, Manuela.
E para participar do debate, convido
And
ao
also
palco
to be
grupo de
part of this
especialistas,
debate, we have
começando
here
por
a
senhora
group of
Delfina
experts.
Soares,
Mrs.
diretora da
Delfina
Unidade
Soares,
Operacional da
Director
Universidade
of
das Nações
Operational
Unidas
Unit
sobre
of the
Governança
University
Eletrônica,
of UN
orientada por
about
políticas,
eGov,
a UNO-eGov.
guided by politics. UNU eGov.
Senhora Eleidmar Silva, diretora de
Mrs.
plataformas de
Eleidmar
serviços
Silva,
públicos digitais
Director
da
of
Secretaria
Digital
de Governo
Public
Digital do
Platforms
Ministério da
for
Gestão
the
e da
Ministry
Inovação
of
em Serviços
Management and
Públicos.
Innovation of Public Services Brazil.
Senhora Elsa Esteves,
Elsa
cátedra Unesco em
Esteves,
Sociedade do
who is
Conhecimento e Governança
a
Digital da
expert
Universidade
in
Nacional
governance,
da SUD, na
digital
Argentina,
governance
e
by
pesquisadora
the
do
El
Conselho
Sud
Nacional de
University
Pesquisa
in
Científica e
Argentina,
Tecnológica.
and also a researcher in the Committee of Scientific and
Senhora
Technical
Maria Alexandra
Research.
Cunha, professora na
Mrs.
Escola de
Maria Alexandra
Administração de
Cunha,
Empresas de
professor
São
at
Paulo, da
the
Fundação Getúlio
Business
Vargas.
School of São Paulo, Foundation Getúlio Vargas.
E senhora Virginia Pardo,
And
diretora da
Mrs.
área de
Virginia
Sociedade da
Pardo,
Informação da
Director of
Agência de Governo
Information
Eletrônico
Society
e
to the
Sociedade da
Electronic
Informação do
Government and
Uruguai.
Information
Bem-vindas.
Society, Uruguay. Welcome,
Passo a
ladies.
palavra, então, à moderadora.
Now I will hand over to our moderator.
Obrigada, Carol.
Enjoy
Bom,
the discussion.
boa tarde.
Thank you
a
and
todas
good
e todos.
afternoon. everyone. I'm so glad to be responsible for this opening session and to moderate the digital transformation panel on a public sector. This is our second round of discussion here in Cetic.br, and I feel so honored to be part of this panel with experts that have been so key for the digital agenda, regionally, nationally, and of course, internationally. So let me thank you all for having accepted the invitation. You all have amazing and relevant trajectories in the production of knowledge, public policies, implementation of digital solutions. We have here professors, researchers, public managers who will indeed add valuable insights to this session. But as a representative of Cetic.br, I couldn't refrain from mentioning Cetic.br contributions in the past 20 years, where Cetic has been mapping the interaction between public administration and Brazilian society throughout digital technologies. At the public side, throughout ICT, electronic e-gov, where they have been following the changes of the public manifestations throughout the country as how they are using technologies to improve their activities and to offer service and information to the population as a whole. And the video that you had a chance to see showed some of those changes between 2013 and 2023 in a meaningful way as how public services are addressed to their citizens. They increased the number of city halls being federal or state or on a state level who make possible services to the population via internet. But there are some obstacles and challenges, and among them, at a federal level, or maybe federal level, they have more initiatives. We still have enough room to expand the adoption of technologies, especially among city halls. We see a significant difference between the services which are offered depending on you live, if you live on a capital or on a more remote city. So the idea is to decrease inequalities. And moreover, we see a possibility to expand our endeavors, and the most mentioned reasons for that, for not using AI in the public sectors. Why shouldn't they? Due to the lack of skilled staff and low institutional approach about that. This is one of the goals of eGov ICTs. On the other hand, ICTs households, they use users internet average. They have been measuring for 20 years how much internet is used by users and how they interact to the public administration via internet. Results, they showed a significant increase where most internet users, they search for some sort of information or they access some public service via the internet, but this access is also not balanced. Youngsters and those with a higher income and living in urban cities, whereas other people in our population who do not have that present access and they are not able to have such an access. All these differences and inequalities alert us about the need to have a people-centered approach where we have to digitalize all public services to become available and useful to all our citizens, to the population as a whole. That's why a citizen-centered approach should be essential. In addition of e-gov, households, ICTs, Cetic has been producing other type of data and publications, such as indicators, studies related to privacy, personal data protection, not AI in the public sector, but also some other emergency technologies. And we are producing studies and researches to understand better digital access by vulnerable groups of people like women, for instance. And you are all invited to participate and access Cetic.br and learn more about our other initiatives. Now, getting back here to our guests, we are going to talk and hear lessons learned nationally, internationally, what are priorities for public policies, and what is the best way to guarantee that digital transformation in the public sector will be consolidated as a tool of inclusion, in efficiency, and a way to strengthen the relationship between society and our government. Delfina, please, you'll be the first one. But before that, thank you so much for so many years of partnership with the UniGov. Many people have been emphasizing that they are following Cetic for many years, and our partnership dates back from 2018. Our agreement has already been renewed, which proves our wonderful partnership, where we have translated international documents. We have participated at several conferences which are organized by UniGov. We have written some texts together as how can we improve measures and indicators. Thank you for your participation. And as you are one of the experts in this working group, I would like to ask you, there are several digital government references. There are global indicators which try to measure and get information from different countries to understand how they are improving their digital service offer. How those global frameworks for measurement have been supporting the building up of a digital governance based on data and evidence. Good afternoon, everyone. In a few hours, we are going to close this event, and you have to fly to the other side of the ocean, and I am already missing you guys. But let me start by thanking Cetic on behalf of Alexander Barbosa, Cetic, Nick.br for the kind invitation. I also like to acknowledge my grateful to Cetic. Congratulations, not just for your 20th anniversary celebration, but above all for the amazing work that you have been performing throughout those 20 years. I am more into eGov, so I couldn't help not mention it, the excellence of this ICT. And not only the quality of the program, the quality of speakers, and all lessons learned thanks to the contribution of several colleagues. So, and you know, you are amazing host. Thank you so much for having me here with you. Once again, I feel honored and glad to be here, and also everything that we have already done together throughout our partnership. Our collaboration dates back from 2018. I know that's not 20 years, but you know, we didn't start yesterday, and much have we done during those years of partnership. And now here we are discussing about our possibilities of collaboration.
Quer efetivamente e tem como objetivo colaborar. Passando então à questão.
Now, going back to your question, Manuela, which is quite timely, and my brief answer. I'm learning some of your Brazilian slang, so a brief, a shrinked answer about your question, how those frameworks and the global references, I can say yes, those global references, they are essential. And they are essential for a number of reasons. One of them, it's because not all countries are like Brazil. Brazil, and we have all witnessed that throughout those years. And after everything we have heard so far, that Brazil is in a privileged position. Brazil is creating this privileged position because there are no other countries where there is such an availability of indicators like the indicators developed by this institution in Brazil. And not only that, and everything that I'm going to say from now on is based on practical terms. We have a number of projects with several countries all over the globe, but more specifically with the African continent. And there are many, many countries that don't have any driver or any measurement mechanism embedded. So a more value of the global international frameworks is exactly to help those other countries that have no other chance to start their measurement process, to allow them to have some metrics, some indicators, so they will be able, with those indicators and values, to define better their strategies, policies. Undoubtedly, this is a benefit, a key benefit. There are other countries that have some sort of indicators in place, but not as well done or well structured as the ones that you have over here in Brazil. This is one of those more values associated to the international frameworks, which is to show a set of standards and indicators that are quite questionable. We may question them, criticize, and give our opinion about this set of indicators. But in fact, they are frameworks which were developed for many, many years, thanks to the effort to design and create the best set of indicators. One of the main advantages is to have had standardized a set of measures to be used, which may allow countries to set their policies, strategies, identify opportunities, as well as opportunities for investment and transformations. Conversely, being internationals, they also offer to other countries the possibility to learn more about themselves and also to compare them to others where they are designed to be applied globally to all countries, allowing to have some type of involvement to allow comparability, which is very important. And that is another advantage of those frameworks, as they allow to identify a set of best practices that other countries may explore and replicate according to their local necessities.
Associado também a isto, a estas frameworks, é a questão de elas funcionarem
In relation to those
como mecanismos de
frameworks,
autoinscrevão,
who end up
porque da feita como
working
referia, elas foram definidas e são
as
geralmente o
they are
resultado de processos
defined, they are
discursivos,
a
de forma até
result of
colaborativa,
processes
e
that
portanto
were
há uma certa
conducted in a
confiança
collaborative
nessas
manner,
frameworks, e
and
isto por
there
isso
is a
podem
certain
ajudar
level of
para
trust
perceber
with the
efetivamente se
frameworks,
estão a
and
meter
countries will
se
feel
aquilo
safe
foi o
to
resultado
apply
de anos
part of
de
those
reflexão e
frameworks, as
participação de vários
each
atores,
one of the
então
frameworks, they represent
eu
a
posso dar
result
uma
of
confiança que
many
eles
years
podem
of hard
desenvolver e
work.
aprender com isso. E, portanto, estas são algumas das
These are
vantagens que
then
eu
some of the
diria e
advantages
alguns dos
that
benefícios
I would
que a existência
say about the
destes
benefits of
frameworks
those
internacionais
international
trazem,
frameworks who are
efetivamente, para os
available
países todos,
and
e
who
em
could
particular
many
para os
countries
selecionados de dados.
benefit from.
Obrigada, Delfina.
Thank you, Delfina. Thank you.
Perfeito. Eu quero trazer agora, né, uma
Next,
perspectiva mais da região.
let's
Então,
hear
vou
a
fazer uma
more
pergunta para a
local
professora Érica.
perspective, and I'd like to ask a question,
Justamente, né, pensando
Professor.
em sua experiência aí de atuação com
We
países,
all know
salvo engano, aí mais de
about
30
your
países que você
broad
já fez seus
experience.
projetos de
You
governo
have
digital, já
met
atuou de
over
alguma forma,
30
seja
countries'
pesquisando, seja
digital
apoiando esses países.
governmental
Eu queria saber um
plans,
pouco mais, né,
working
baseado nessa
together or
experiência, em relação aos
supporting
países da
them.
América Latina, do
Based on your
Caribe,
experience in Caribbean and
essa
Latin
possibilidade de
American
colaboração
countries,
regional. Né?
what
Como a
is the
colaboração
real
regional na produção
possibility
de
for
dados pode
regional
apoiar as
collaboration?
estratégias
How can
digitais
that
aqui, né,
support
principalmente na nossa
digital
região, mas
strategies
que
in our
reflitam ao mesmo tempo
region,
os seus
which
desafios,
would
alguns comuns, né,
reflect
muitos deles comuns,
their
ligados à
common
infraestrutura,
challenges
capacidade
related
institucional, mas
to
também a diversidade, né, as
infrastructure, institutional
características aí
capacity, and their
né, que
diversities.
podem ser muitas vezes
Features
vantagens, mas
that
podem trazer
could
algumas dificuldades a
represent,
depender do país. Então, eu
could be
queria ouvir um
sound
pouco
as
aí
an
dessas colaborações
advantage,
que
other times
permitir
not so
também, se
much.
puder, já
And
trazer
if
também,
you
né,
would
quais são os
allow me,
passos, né, quais as
and if you
ações que
could
esses
also
países
share
podem ter,
what are future
pensando na nossa
actions
região, eles
that
apontam para
countries
aprimorar a
in these
governança de
two
dados,
regions
né,
could
e
take
a sua
to
capacidade
increase
institucional. A gente
their
aqui, né,
data
tem muito falado
governance
sobre
and
inteligência
their
artificial e ninguém discorda que
institutional
para isso ser
ability.
desenvolvido,
Much has been
ter
said
dados,
here
dados de
about
qualidade para que
AI,
possam ser
and
utilizados é
the
essencial.
idea is
Então, eu
to
queria ouvir
have
um
a data
pouquinho
of
aí sobre a sua
quality.
perspectiva desse
What
tema na
is your
nossa
take
região.
on
Obrigada,
that?
mais uma
Thank
vez, por
you.
estar conosco.
Thank you for
Muito
being
obrigada,
here.
Manuela.
Thank you,
Buenas
Manuela.
tardes a todas
Good
y a todos.
afternoon to
Me
everyone.
dijeron que podía hablar en castellano
I was
y voy a
told
hablar
that I could
despacio para
speak
que nos puedan
Spanish and I will
entender.
speak slowly so you can
Mucho
better
se ha dicho acá
understand
en
me. Much
agradecimiento
already
y
has been said
reconocimiento del
in
valor de CETIC
acknowledgement
en
and to
Latinoamérica,
recognize
pero
the
si no
value
me ha
of
hecho, quiero
CETIC for the
agradecer a la
whole
señora
Latin
Barbosa, a todo su
America. I'd
equipo,
like to
por lo
also
que
greet
significa. Y como
and thanks
argentina lo digo,
Alexandre
el orgullo de
Barbosa
tener una
and all
institución
his
como
team.
CETIC
As an
Brasil.
Argentinian, we feel so
Y
proud to have an
además
institution
felicitarlos
like
también por el
CETIC
evento que
Brazil in
se avecina
Argentina.
ayer, las
And I also would
discusiones
like to greet you
Latinoamérica
for this
Viva
international
Artemisa,
seminar
como
that has
escuchábamos,
been
¿no?
of high
Muy
class
interesantes las discusiones.
and
Así que
lots of food
felicitaciones
for
y
thought.
esperamos seguir
So
colaborando, no otros
congratulations.
20 años más, no,
And
pero
I don't know
que
if I
sigan
can stay
festejando
another
muchos,
20
muchos años
years,
más
but I hope
CETIC
that
en Brasil por su
CETIC
labor
keeps on
con nuestro
celebrating
país.
forever and ever.
Creo que hablar de colaboración regional para la transformación digital
Regional
amerita la extensión
collaboration
de un par de
for
debates,
digital
y más que
transformation
nada
in
hablar de
Latin
gobernanza de
America
datos para la
and talking
transformación
about
digital
data
por
governance
la
and
relevancia e
digital
importancia que tiene
transformation
en el uso de la inteligencia
with
artificial. No
great
podemos hablar
importance and
de inteligencia
relevance in the
artificial si
use
no
of
la alimentamos
artificial
con datos. Eso es
intelligence. We couldn't talk
importantísimo,
about
comenzar a hablar de
artificial
gobernanza de
intelligence
datos.
without
Y cuando pensaba en
data
mostrar
governance.
ejemplos de cómo podemos colaborar para avanzar en
And
esto,
if I
me vienen a
wanna
la
think
mente
about
dos
any
casos,
examples as how we
mejor
may
que ilustrar.
collaborate, it comes
Cuando
to my
hicimos
mind two
ITO
cases.
hace 2 años en Belo Horizonte,
As a
hablamos con
way to
colegas de
exemplify,
CETIC.
we met
Nosotros
2 years
estábamos,
ago in
el
Belo
Sistema
Horizonte,
Universitario de Gestión
talking to some
Pública
other colleagues from
estaba
CETIG,
realizando,
talking
llevando todavía
about
adelante
the
un
public
proyecto financiado
management
por la Unión
educational
Europea,
system
y
in
en colaboración con
Argentina.
ellos
We
nos
still
plantearon que había
follow a
incertidumbre
project which
sobre
has
los
been
datos
organized with the
en el
European
país
Union,
relacionados
and they
con
said they
penetración
had
de
some
tecnologías
uncertainties
digitales
about the
y
data and digital
alfabetización
technologies,
digital de la
and
población,
also the
porque eran
digital literacy of the population. The data was not in accordance to what we would have and the data that the telcos would share. At that time, we talked to Cetic, and they were humble enough to offer us all their methodology to support us and to replicate part of the investigations that Cetic performs in Brazil and in Argentina. This is very valuable. It's very kind of them, and it shows the relevance and how much we may support one to another. Anytime we share good best practices. Another example has to do with a question that has been asked this morning. How can we drive a digital agenda in Argentina? The eGov to the Latin America and the Caribbean is a network which lasts for more than 20 years. Initially, that was created by the United States, and it was like a community of people who are interested in eGov. And today that platform became an institution which gathered together all the agencies of electronic government, representatives from the Latin America and the Caribbean. And thanks to their collaboration, they share knowledge, best practices, and they drive actions to new opportunities. They have a public repository software, open source software, which had been developed by Chile, adopted later on by Uruguay, just to illustrate. In addition, they are working on standards and platforms of interoperability transnational to Latin America, with the repository of digital firms from Latin America, and they work on the interoperability for the digital signature. In addition to collaboration to support best practices to the repository of knowledge or shared repository knowledge, that is key. And like the European Union, we lack of a capacity in Latin America to be able to implement. And as an example of collaboration, I have another one, which is very interesting. I had the possibility to interview Anabela Pedroso, who is the Director of Technology by the Ministry of Justice in Portugal. She used to be, at least, and we were documenting all the transformational efforts that they were performing in Portugal. That's why I'd like to share over here that the concept of citizenship network that was created in Brazil with the delegation of the Portuguese government who came down here in the year 2000, and then they took that concept back to Europe. So this is an example of how best practices may be shared, may be replicated. And now as to next steps for data governance, we have a project in collaboration with the Cetic, which is a study to understand what was the data management of the public services in Argentina and how could we make the recommendations for public policies investigations. They had some activities, but all isolated. They were working in silos without an opportunity to sum up and to add value based on the data. So the recommendation for public policies is a recommendation based on a classification where they saw an idea to identify all the data governance and to create an entity, like a framework that would be very close to the digital agenda that the governments have. And like that, they would be able to create not only a structure, but two types of substructures. One which should be operational, that would be responsible to drive daily practice, and another governance structure where data strategy governance would be defined. In Argentina, we still have to update our legal framework. We have outdated law, which should be updated, like your legal framework. We try to approve a bill of acts, but that has not been yet approved by the Congress, and some other regulation should be defined as how we have to use the data, how can and what can we do for agencies to better manage data. Danielle was talking about how can we perform consultations, send data about some scenarios that we may have in the medical field, how ChatGPT can be of any help. But if we do that, we'll be impairing the privacy data. In addition, we have made project of the use of AI in the public buildings, civil services. They issue consultations throughout the ChatGPT, but without questioning if they are violating data privacy or if that data could be indeed be shared in the AI websites or apps. And another possibility would be to strengthen technical infrastructure, information services, services to be managed throughout their capacity building models, models that could be able to mature data storage management to define their technical infrastructure, technical data resources that we have, how we may have access to data, and still develop a capacity for data management. For example, data directory to define which are the reliable data sources, which sort of data would be kept, and by which organizations, who may have access to data. All of that will just be possible if standards, procedures, and ethical landmarks are defined according to the use of e-gov data. Also, if we develop a service that could be working as an emphasis or a driver to show them how to spread this structure or this framework at different levels of the government level, state, federal, and last but not least, human capacity build to raise awareness not only in the civil servants, but also to embed new areas of services and technology to allow other possibilities of leadership to build up this talent of data that the country needs to develop themselves, and with that create an internal practices that will be able to promote anything which is related to the best data management possibility. Both presentations were great, very timely, and necessary from a public administration standpoint. Actions that the public administration may carry out to promote activities, the use of technologies, especially into internal projects. And now I'd like to talk about the population side. Now I'd like to talk to the countries from a national context, and I have a question to Virginia. Thank you so much, Virginia, for your presence. We have a very long-lasting partnership. I visited Uruguay last year, and that is not, and you don't just present what Cetic does, but we have a wonderful partnership between our Cetic and yours. So I am grateful for our partnership, and Uruguay is so much acknowledged for their digital approaches, being them in the e-gov sector or others. Based on all your initiatives and skills, I would like to hear from you and how can public entities monitor and assess the promoted changes by digital transformation in this sector, especially thinking about the subject society? How can we think about this monitoring? Because we usually say the side of the demand of the digital government. Thank you.
Preparé todo para que no pasara y pasó. Perdón. Bueno, primero que nada, muchísimas gracias
First
por
of
la
all,
invitación.
thank you for the invitation and congratulations, Cetic, for 20 years of activities. I am here representing the e-gov from Uruguay, AGESIC, and this year we'll be celebrating 18 years of activities. So I am with the agency since the very beginning, and we started to follow a sustainable digital approach in our country. Since the first day, we have all relationship with Cetic.br, Cetic, work in different topics like accessibility, inclusion, measurement, indicators. So I would like to thank Cetic from Uruguayan government who has been helping us since the very first day, helping us to develop a process of monitoring, analysis of information, to be able to include public policies. From an e-government perspective, we understand that we have to improve and to transform the state to be able to allow services of quality to all their citizens. It's impossible not to pay attention to what happens to the society. It's not an isolated policy. It's not simply digitalizing a service. We have to understand what happens with the people at their different sectors, where are their main problems, barrier, and based on the evidences, we have to update our actions and to apply some measures. In those 18 years, we started to have a very strong digital agenda with very important indicators, and we had a huge challenge, not just to modernize or to turn the public services or to increase the offer of online service, but rather access and connectivity. All of that was key. So we had to start designing the studies with indicators, a very intense and hard working together with the Statistical Institute, because they were advocating for the fact that the system could count on indicators based on technology. What was that advancement and the significant or meaningful changes? The internet access in Uruguay happened in 2010. 46% of the population had the internet access everywhere. And today we have a new information, not published yet, but I will spoiler, technicians had told us, but we don't have that yet published. But the number is 94% of households connected to internet of high quality. So the daily use of internet, so that's not a bad figure. In average, you know that 31% of our households that had access daily. Today, 92% of the Uruguayan population, they access internet every day. And this is what I like so much, and we feel very comfortable about the daily internet access. In 2010, we had 1 to 91% of level 5 in number of access. That was 70%. And today, the chart which we get so proud of in terms of internet access is 92% that have this daily access. In that sense, that was a jump.
So in terms of access to connectivity too. So we've been talking a lot. This is part of the discussions that we are having with all teams, and we're talking to very significant and important entities in terms of how we can have better quality access. And all of this is quality of life, isn't it? We even said that it's not just about digital inclusion. We need to use the word inclusion only. We are all in the digital world. We are all included in it. So we just need to have capacity and know how to deal with it. We need to have a fair and equal society, and everyone needs to be within that context. So part of what we do in the observatory is to provide the input for that. We have a team working in monitoring with statistical systems, and we are inspired by these issues and helped by Cetic's methodology standards, international standards. How can we adjust the public policies that we need to prioritize? It's not something lost. We need to translate that into concrete actions. This is the challenge. And the data that we have here, we already have access that are connections to the cell phone. So this is not a problem. But we need to see where the gaps are, because then we need to see the use as a whole, identify and close the gaps. So access universal for us to communicate through social networks, through YouTube and everything. We have cell phones and many different devices. And there are specific studies that are part of the whole set of the studies that we have with sustainable processes. And this is part of the monitoring process. With the use of these online services, sometimes there are barriers, gaps, bigger populations, older than 45, or with a low educational level. So the main thing or the main barrier is AI. The main problem is poor schooling. Sometimes they don't really trust the transactions. They can't make any online payments. So there are some indicators demonstrating this, that these people end up having more difficulty, and we need to take measures to deal with that. The offer of online services is widespread. So thinking in terms of connectivity in Uruguay, we could digitize almost all services, right? And we understand that we still have a major difficulty for this population specifically. So we need to see which actions we can make a priority for the adoption and the use by the minority. So we have one important piece of data. Well, cell phones are universal. So in this manner, it conditions us with strategies and policies that are important, with which we need to work, thinking that all information and all services need to be simple, accessible, in a cell phone, because at least 98% of Uruguayans have cell phones and use it. So we are solving more or less this gap, closing this gap through the use of devices. So in this manner, this is part of the discussion and a deep analysis that we are conducting to take the measures. So we have more cell phones and many different things. It's not possible to do it just based on a cell phone. So there are some gaps. There is a share of the population with lower income that do not have a computer at their homes. So there are many interactions, and we checked many things, which sometimes we can't do with a cell phone, and we need to check the device too. And also another theme that we need to address is related to healthcare, security, and which are the concerns and perceptions that people have in terms of confidence, trust, cybersecurity, personal data, and why they don't make online payments, and what is the difficulty that they have. Why don't they do that? Why do they prefer going to the bank? And why do they prefer to do everything in person? So we are processing the data, monitoring it to put this in our planning in public management to have a complete or full inclusion. This is it. Thank you very much. So within the Brazilian context, there are many different actions centered on users of public users. But before giving the floor to Mario, I would like to thank the Department of Digital Government, not just for being here today, but for the partnership in projects with Cetic since 2005, way back when, and other names. It was all hasn't always been called Digital Services Department, but it is fundamental for electronic government projects for the eGov. Since 2013, we have the institutional support of this department. This is fundamental for the main organization to be aware of how important a survey is, to know that it is serious. So I'd like to reinforce how important it is to have partners in the government for Cetic surveys to make sure that people participate, and this applies to other sectors. Yesterday, we had other government agencies such as Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, and they're all fundamental for people to know about these studies, to know that they're serious, that there is research. So I would like to thank you once again for the partnership with STG. Please, Eligmar, take my gratitude and express my gratitude to the minister. And talking about users of public services, I would like to hear a little bit about how the Brazilian government has been working in terms of looking at the user experience in access to digital services. For example, the federal government has been doing. So you've been working also to understand assessments in terms to find how satisfied users are with those services. Thank you. And I would like to thank Cetic very much for the opportunity of being here representing the eGov department, and to congratulate you for the 20th anniversary, for organizing this event. It's a great pleasure and an honor to be taking part on this panel. Good afternoon, everyone. Well, has been a long-standing partnership. We celebrate that today. We are celebrating the 20th anniversary of Cetic.br, but we're also celebrating our 20 years of partnership with the digital government department. Cetic is so important that we have no idea. When we stop and think about our trajectory, it's very big, it's very significant. These studies, they feed and they are the basis for our decisions since 2010, since we were still deciding the electronic governments until we got now to the phase of digital government. So after 2018, 19, so it was based on Cetic data that we could understand better the Brazilian population and to make decisions that were based on data, not just based on our perception. We know that Brazil is a very big country with very different economic and social realities, but we need data. And then the studies that Cetic conducts, they're very relevant to serve as the basis for our decisions of the digital government. So through many of these studies, for example, we can understand that Brazil is a connected country. It's very present in the digital. Brazilian population is on the internet. We like the internet. We use it a lot. We are one of the most connected countries in the world, and this has made it possible for us to intensify digital government initiatives. Let's take public services to the digital because people are there, they want to be there. They want simpler, easier to use services that will make it possible for us to do what citizens really want. So today is the day to use no one says, well, great, today I'm going to access a government service, I'm going to spend hours and hours on a queue. No one wants to do that. They want, for example, to register for events and everything, and the government is present throughout the lives of citizens. And we need to have a digital and fast government. And research shows that although we are on the internet, we can see that many people are not, or that they do not have good quality access as they deserve and should. And this has led us to base the digital government on the assumption that it is here to facilitate the lives of people, however, without excluding or making the lives of those who are not digitally included more difficult. So we need to take actions to include those people, because people want to be on the internet. They want to enjoy the benefits of being digital. People with disabilities want, blind people, deaf people, they don't want to need to walk and go to a public agency in person to solve everything related to the government. They want to be digital, just as the elderly. They use it a lot. Social media, social network. But sometimes they use it just for social media, but don't use for government services because they are afraid. But they are also very much present on the digital world. So we need to make it more seamless and more fluid. And how can we do that? By paying attention at people. So we no longer create digital solutions just saying, well, because this is to benefit citizens. Okay, that's right. But which effective mechanisms are we providing for us to understand and deliver good solutions from the perspective of citizens? So that's why this is important. For example, survey with users of public services, day-to-day surveys to see what their perception is. And since 2020, 2019, we have an assessment of public services, and then afterwards, it was in the law of users of public services, and satisfaction survey is mandatory, not just assessment when we put in the portal the amount of digital services and the star showing the number of reviews and the score for each service. It's not just to show nice numbers. The law says clearly that we need to apply improvements in public services based on user reviews. So we didn't have user assessment. Now we have this assessment tool in Gov.br so that everyone could include the perception of users so that we could apply and make public services better. And using from the perspective of users, we also understood that many times users of public services are very confused in their interactions with the government. They don't know where this is offered, which ministry, which company, which form. So different things, different portals, different places, different visual identities. This confuses. Their digital journey is more confusing. They need to find. Oftentimes, services are not even indexed in search engines. We don't want them to stay too long in government services. They seek the government when they want to travel. They need a passport or something. We want them to have that as fast as possible because in the end, what they want to do is to travel. They use the government because they want to do something else. For example, they want to register for application tests. So they want to register because they want to go into a university and they want to study. So we need to see that government services are in the way of people. It should be easy and fast. And we will only be able to do that if we identify perceptions. So an important initiative related to the experience of users of public systems is the use of design system, which is a unified visual identity that is unique for the government, and we unified everything in the Gov.br so that they can have access to all government-related services. They don't want to go to the ministry X or that. They just want to do whatever they want to do. So we are trying to facilitate for them to find more easily whatever they want to do in a single portal, and also using our main product, which is the Gov.br. It's a single channel of authentication so that they don't need to have different passwords for different digital services that they use. So unification of the authentication service through a unique digital identity. Our Gov.br account was important to improve the experiences of users. Today we have 167 million Brazilians with active accounts in the Gov.br, a significant percentage of the Brazilian population. We just talked today about this, how it's important to mention almost 170 million users at the Gov.br. And I can't just go to the question, I need to talk about Professor Maria Alexandra. She has been a Cetic partner even before the ICT government, but she's a very special partner with the eGov and she's a scientific consultant of many of our issues. And I would like to take opportunity of her being here to thank all experts and consultants. There are many, I won't even try to name all the names. If I try to say names, I'm going to forget someone, but you're all very important for everything we have said. The importance of participation, sharing, to produce data that are unique for different audiences, for public policies, for society. So I always kid, so we don't produce data to hide it, like the ring of the Lord of the Rings. We want it to be used. This is the idea. So we should exchange, and public managers should use it, and everyone. So I would like to take the opportunity of the presence here, and all experts and consultants and everyone. You're all fundamental for Cetic projects. And you do know and very well ICT government, and I'm going to try and use your experience and how research has been helping, and this is our objective, has been helping you to understand the uses of technologies in public administration in Brazil, and which are the disparities that persist in the use. I would like to hear from you, based on the initiative and research, which are the lessons that ICT government has learned that might guide the inclusive digital transformation of Brazil and other countries, maybe even. Thank you so much, Manuela. I would like to praise Cetic for your 20th anniversary, but I would like to thank the opportunity that I have had over these 20 years of being together as a specialist to produce data, because this has given me the possibility of reflection about data and about what was happening in society that is really unique and of great value for a researcher. So congratulations and thank you very much. So before answering your question, Manuel, I would also like to draw your attention for us being in a panel with women only. Well, for 40 years I've been working with public informatics. I joined it 40 years ago, and this is the second time I am sitting on a panel with all women. We've always been working, coordinating projects, influencing and everything, but I'm counting two, actually three, but the other one was women in IT, so I'm not counting that. But this is the second time when open government of the city administration of São Paulo, I think Fernanda was there. First time that I was in an all-women panel, and this is the second time, so congratulations, Cetic. And I have seen countless panels with men only, so it's not that it doesn't matter, right? So Manu, thank you very much for your question, and this is a question that any researcher would like to hear. And I think that a very important lesson that we take from Cetic surveys, but especially the electronic government ICT and the household ICT, so in terms of offer and demand for digital services, what I would tell governments, and this is not personal, it's governments in general, it is that it is super important for us to have data. It's super important to have people who are skilled to deal with data, but it's also very important for us to have a critical reflection about what the numbers are telling us. And as it's been said before, we have very eloquent examples, even though more recently I think that the Brazilian federal government has been using a lot the data of research. Well, you've always used it, but sometimes the international frameworks and common thinking or common sense lead us to ignore what data are saying to us. I would like to refer specifically to a disastrous policy in the world, which is digital by default. So the data, and I remember I was on a panel, we were very, very happy. We were thrilled that Brazil had reached 86 people on the internet, and Brazil was doing very well on the picture in terms of offer of public services. And I was at the panel and I said, well, but we have 14% people who do not access the internet, not even once every 3 months. And digital by default, well, thinking everything was great. Only 14% of the Brazilian population. It means 30 million people. So 30 million people are completely excluded. And the colleague from one government responded to me. He says, my concern was very good, that I was worried about the poor. But if we had digital by default, we would have more funds because the state would be more efficient to even have public policies which that would include those people. Well, not really. Well, it didn't happen. But I think that the portrait that we have today of the study in terms of a meaningful connectivity is a consequence. So we had data way before that, both in terms of offer and demand, indicating that digital by default was wrong. And it was in IceGov Guimarães that I saw the results of the international survey, and I saw that changing. And I wanted to scream "Go!" when they finally said this policy was mistaken and the new recommendation of the UN is inclusion by default, inclusion by design. So we had numbers about that, and we had number about that 10 years before. But this movement prevented us from saying that what data were showing us. My second recommendation to governments regards what we already know about governments is that, and about the use of technology by the governments, is that the advancement of digital government is unequal. It's unequal if we consider the different branches, power, agencies in the same administration, different spheres and levels of government, local, state, federal government. And as this advancement is unequal, it takes place in multiple different ways, influenced by many different factors, we should consider as part of the strategies, national strategies. And congratulations to the current strategy. You need to consider the different perspectives and call the different governments to understand their perspective and what they consider important with regards to the digital government. Not just national strategies, not just do they need to consider this inequality, but they should also listen to different perspectives. Another recommendation, I think Cetic is great at that, is the importance of statistics and the importance of us having robust, comparable, historical series of data, but also the use of other forms to obtain data, other methods to complement what we know so that we can understand better the phenomenon with which we are dealing. So I would just like to give you an example. I wasn't part of this, unfortunately, I should have gone, but I remember once Manuela and a group of Cetic researchers went to do cognitive interviews in many local governments, and I died of envy because I didn't go on that trip, because they went to many municipalities that then
enfim, entrevistados pratique
would
governo
be
eletrônico,
interviewed
mas como
by
essas
the
entrevistas, que
eGov
foram
ICT,
entrevistas
and how
qualitativas,
these
trouxeram
qualitative
insights,
interviews
trouxeram
provided insights,
ideias, trouxeram compreensão
ideas,
daquilo que
understanding
a gente estava
of
medindo.
everything that we were
E uma
measuring.
última,
And one
desculpa que
last,
já passou meu tempo,
well, I'm sorry,
mas
I have no more
uma
time.
última recomendação que eu
One last
faria para os
recommendation that I
governos
would
é
make to governments is
o que a pesquisa sobre o governo digital do Cetic ou as
what the research
pesquisas
about digital
nos
government
fazem
that Cetic conducts and what they make
observar de uma
us
maneira muito
see
concreta é
in a
que
very
nós
concrete
temos uma boa
way
oferta
is that we have good
e
offer
uma demanda péssima. E
and
eu acho
terrible
que as
demand.
diferentes pesquisas
But I think that
do
the
Cetic,
different
de uma forma ou de outra,
surveys that Cetic
mostram isso.
conducts somehow
E
show this.
o processo para mudar
And the
a
process to
exclusão digital da
change
população ou as
digital
diferenças de
exclusion of the
inclusão digital da
population
população,
today or
porque nós
differences in
também
digital
temos
exclusion
muita gente
because
usando,
there's also
mas de
lots of
maneiras
people
muito desiguais,
using
vai ser
things in
processo
very different and
longo,
unequal ways.
né?
This is going to be a
Políticas
long
públicas
process.
educacionais,
Public
políticas públicas
policies,
de
educational policies,
telecomunicações,
telecommunications
então vai
policies.
ser um processo longo.
So
Então,
this is going
hoje,
to
os
be a long
governos têm
process.
que
So today,
considerar,
governments
para
need
além da
to
inclusão
consider,
digital,
in addition to
tratar
digital
a exclusão
inclusion,
digital. E isso
to
tem que ser feito
deal with
serviço a
digital
serviço em
exclusion.
cada
And
oferta
this
de
needs
serviço.
to be done
Nós estamos
service by
excluindo,
service at
ora
each
vejam, sempre
offer.
as mesmas
We're
pessoas,
excluding
mulheres,
always the
negros,
same people,
velhos,
women, black,
pessoas com
elderly,
deficiência,
people with
pessoas menos educadas,
disabilities,
pessoas mais pobres,
people with
pessoas
less education,
periféricas.
poorer,
Nós estamos
peripheral people.
excluindo
So
essas
we are
pessoas dos
excluding
serviços
these
bons
people
que o Brasil já
from the
provê.
good
Então, o
services that
desenho
Brazil
de cada
already
serviço
provides.
tem que
So the
considerar a
design
exclusão
of each
digital
service should
para a
consider
inclusão, isso
digital
já foi também
exclusion for
falado aqui.
inclusion. And
O
this has been
desenho
said
tem que
here.
ser
The
inclusão por
design
design. O desenho
needs
dos
to be
serviços tem
inclusion
que
by design.
considerar a
The design of
exclusão
services should
e,
consider exclusion
eventualmente, formas
and
não digitais
even
de
sometimes
prestação de serviço. E acho
non-digital
que ontem a
forms of
gente
service
também já
provision. And I
escutou
think that
isso,
yesterday we
para que
heard that,
todos possam
so that
usufruir da
everyone can
sociedade
enjoy
digital,
the
mesmo
digital
que não
society,
estejam com o
even if
dispositivo
they do
digital
not
na
have the
mão. Vai ser
digital
mais
device
caro,
in their
vai
hands.
ser
But this
mais
is more
difícil.
expensive and it's
Bem-vindos
going
a
to
um
be
mundo
more
desigual,
difficult.
mas
Welcome to
eu
the
acho
unequal
que a
world,
gente tem que
but
fazer
I
isso. Então, esses
think
são
that
os
we
meus
need to
4
do this.
conselhos
So these
para
are my
governo:
4
reflexão
advices for
crítica
the
sobre os
government. This is a
dados, o
critical
avanço
thinking
do governo digital é
about
desigual, isso tem que ser
everything,
considerado,
that access to government services is unequal,
e o desenho
and
dos serviços considerando a exclusão digital.
designing
Obrigada.
services considering digital exclusion.
Não te ouvi que você
Temos,
estava
né, em torno
mutada,
aí de
mas daí eu
mais
deixei, eu ouvi
20
aqui um pouco.
minutos de painel. Eu queria muito fazer uma segunda
Ah, eu-
rodada. Não sei se alguém da organização pode confirmar se eu estou autorizada, né? Mas posso fazer uma segunda rodada? Será que... Ou uma possibilidade, eu falo as
May we
perguntas,
have a
né, para
second
já deixar as
round?
minhas
I
perguntas
will
e abro
ask
também
questions and
para a
then
audiência.
I'm
O que
gonna
que
open
preferem?
to the
Se eu
audience.
fizer as
What do
perguntas
you
2
prefer?
minutinhos para
If
cada
I ask
um,
the
eu
questions
não
2
são perguntas
minutes
fáceis,
each,
mas aí 2
because my
minutos
questions are
é
quite
para ir direto
long,
ao
you know,
ponto.
very
Então, vou chamar
complex.
então, vou começar a segunda rodada novamente agora
So I will start the
com a
second round
Delfina.
once
E,
again now with
Delfina,
Delfina.
tema também, né? E acho que
A topic,
pegando o
Delfina.
gancho da fala da professora Maria Alexandra, né, a importância também, né, ela olha, fala muito do Brasil, fala da importância do contexto
Maria
local, fala do
Alexandra
contexto
talks about the
latino-americano,
local context,
fala do
Latin
desenvolvimento da
American
oportunidade social.
context.
Falar um pouco, né, sobre, continuando falando dessas referenciais globais, né?
Still
pode tratar esse tema,
addressing
assim, do que é
global
positivo, né, você
references.
já trouxe um pouco, mas das barreiras para
What
dados
are the
comparáveis
barriers
internacionalmente,
for
né? Especialmente, né,
internationally
pensando aí,
comparable
né,
data?
como equilibrar o contexto
How can
local
we
e os desafios
balance the
mundiais
local
com essas
context
necessidades?
to
Eu
the
mudei um pouquinho a
global
pergunta, mas
debate?
já ouvi, conversamos várias vezes sobre isso, tenho certeza que vai ser muito bom ouvir mais uma vez.
Certo, muito obrigada. É uma
Okay,
pergunta
thank you for your
muito
question.
interessante.
Very
E
interesting
deixa-me começar
question.
por partilhar. Eu tinha aqui 3 pensamentos, que eu vou tentar que sejam bem breves em relação a esta questão
I have some
da
comments to
medição
make, and I'll try to be brief
internacional comparável.
about
Portanto, a
the
falar
comparison between
da medição
international
feita em
measures
contexto
to
internacional
the
e
Latin
a
American measures.
medição a este nível. E os 3 pensamentos que eu tinha, o primeiro vai ser muito breve, porque eu já falei sobre ele, que era as medições são
Measurements
importantes.
are
As
important.
medições a
measures on an international level, they are important, and international measures which allow comparisons, they are key. Of course, that they are not the same as those carried out nationally, domestically. And when they are about to define their public policies, it is expected that they will take a look at their statistics, their national measures, but we also understand that the international side should also be considered as one will complement the other. So as to comparability, they are important. But the international measures, they are much more challenging than ours. It's very hard to perform comparable international measures if they are difficult domestically, let alone internationally. Why? Why is it? We cannot run the risk once we measure. We cannot run the risk of not measuring properly. And, there is a very strict way to carry out measurements, exactly like Cetic does. And we have to do everything to everyone to measure well and not to make mistakes. And I'd like to use a term which I think is very timely for measurements, which is responsible measurements. And internationally speaking, this would be much more complex because we are talking about the production of a measurement indicator which could be applied in 173 countries, according to the number given by the UN. 100-ish different types of contexts. How can we use one size fits all to all countries? We have countries with different administrative management and structures. We are talking about countries with several disparities, countries that they have some sort of information about indicators, others who are not aware at all, and even those who have some sort of information, usually that information is outdated. Countries that have the possibility, they have their institutional capacity installed, but not everyone with the skills that the Cetic team has. Countries with different levels of acceptance and acknowledgement of the value of measurements. We know that there are some countries who they don't want to measure, they don't care about results, probably due to more strategic political reasons. And we have, on the other hand, countries where there is a genuine wish to measure. And even the states, countries, they are on a very different level of measurement. All of this list of reasons why it's so hard to have a good instrument that could be applied at all levels, nationally, to all European countries. Let's get one of those acknowledged frameworks, which is NDESA, UN survey, or GDI, the famous GD. We have countries that right now are scoring the maximum score. So measurement for countries like those, they are not so effective as it could be to others. We have to exclude a number of indicators which don't make sense and now replace them to others which are more sophisticated. For those high-class countries, we are going to have a higher capacity of differentiation. But how about those countries that are really low into the rank? They are going to have 0.00. So you know what I mean? Challenges are enormous to develop a measurement system that could be useful in a number of countries. We cannot just develop tools blindless. This is the
temos que
most
arranjar
difficult
forma de
thing.
ter
So we
instrumentos que
have
sejam
to find a
suficientemente
way
ágeis
to
que
get
consigam
instruments which would be
ser
agile
aplicados
and
e
which will be
produzir
able to
resultados
be
que façam
applied
sentido
on
nestes
products and results that
Exato.
will make
Eu,
sense
só para ir
within this
minuto, porque o último
context.
pensamento eu acho que é muito importante também, porque
Could you
ainda por
give
cima
me one more
estando eu
minute,
aqui a
please?
representar uma organização
I'm
internacional,
here
que
representing
tem a ver
an
com
international
a
organization,
sobreposição
and
das
my last
medições a
comment
nível
is
internacional.
overlay of
Eu
measurements
referi
at
um
an
framework,
international
referi
level.
o EGDI da UNDESA, mas há
I
outros.
refer to EGDI as a
Sabem, a maior parte
framework,
das
but
pessoas
there are
sabe que
many
o
others, you
OCDE
know.
tem
You
o
know
Environment
that
Index, tem o Our Data,
OECD has
o
the
Banco
index,
Mundial tem o
our data, the
GDMI, o
World Bank,
autêntico, e
GDMI,
a
which is
Comissão
another
Europeia, por exemplo, só para
index,
referir
and the
alguns, tem
European Commission
4.
has
Aquilo que
4
está a dizer é que neste
frameworks.
momento
And right now,
Portugal
Portugal
é avaliado
is
em 8,
assessed within
de acordo com
8
estes instrumentos, nestes 8 instrumentos.
requests, 8
Isto
of those
significa
tools or
Portugal, neste
instruments.
momento,
It
tem que
means
fornecer
that Portugal
informação
right now
e é
has to
avaliado
supply
em
information, and it's assessed in
1053 indicadores. Se
1053
nós somarmos os
indicators.
indicadores
If we
todos
sum up
associados a cada
all
destes
indicators
8
associated
instrumentos,
to each
são
one of those 8 instruments,
1053
we
indicadores.
have a total
Para esses
amount of
1053 indicadores, todos os anos, ou
1053
quase todos os anos,
indicators.
Portugal tem que
And Portugal almost every
Portugal,
year
como disse o
has to
senhor, tivemos a
produce.
trabalhar com a Agência para a Modernização Administrativa e, portanto, temos estado a fazer
I'm
este
talking
trabalho
about Portugal
de
because
reflexão.
I'm
Isto é uma
more
imensa
aware
sobreposição.
of that
Sendo
information.
que
So there is a huge
muitos
overlay among
destes
those
marcos têm
indicators,
indicadores que se
and some
sobrepõem,
of
são
those scores they
específicos.
have
Alguns
repeated
são totalmente repetições, são o que nós
indicators.
chamamos de
Some
repetições
are
perfeitas,
totally
únicas, ou que aparecem em
repeated. That's
vários
an indicator which
dos
appears at
instrumentos.
several
Noutros
other
casos são
instruments.
imperfeitas, mas tudo isto gera muita
All of
confusão,
that
muita
generates
dificuldade
so
nos
much
países que
confusion and
tentam
difficulty
concluir isto, tentam
in the
perceber isto,
countries
tentam
that try to
aplicar e tentam
perceive it and
definir
apply
algo
it
a
and
partir disto.
define something
Portanto,
based on.
aquilo que eu deixo aqui é um reconhecimento de, se calhar, e agora utilizando outro termo e algo que é muito relevante neste momento, nós
What is
constantemente agora
very
ouvimos falar da
relevant
necessidade de
right now,
governação
and
de
we keep
coisas,
talking
governação do
about
AI,
the
governação
need
de
for
dados, governação,
governance,
se calhar
AI
também faz
governance,
falta em termos destas
and a number of different
vários
necessities of
instrumentos
governance,
internacionais que existem,
which
haver
lack of
alguma
some international
governação, haver
instruments.
alguma visão
But
mais holística de todos
if we
eles
have a more
e pôr
holistic
as
perception
entidades
of
que são
all
responsáveis por eles, se
those
calhar para atuarem
instruments by the
conjuntamente, para
entities
podermos
which are
ver,
responsible
podermos
to design them,
afiná-los
if
e evitar
only
algumas
if we'll
dificuldades
be
para que
able
estes
to
países
we'll be
quando
able
tentam
to avoid
aplicá-los.
some of the
Mais, não é aplicá-los, quando
difficulties.
tentam percebê-los, porque o importante efetivamente é perceber estes instrumentos, não é só olhar
We
para os
have to
scores, não é só
perceive
olhar para a
the
composição do
instruments,
ranking.
not just to
Peço
check
desculpa,
the
mas
score and the
Obrigada,
ranked,
Manuela.
but to
Não,
perceive them as so.
Tem uma tarefa um pouco complicada, que eu fiz duas perguntas em
I
uma
have asked you two
parte,
questions
da nossa
before,
sessão. Eu queria ouvir um pouco mais do
and
último
now I'd like
ponto
to listen a little
que
bit
você
more
trouxe, que é a questão da
from your last
capacidade, né,
comment,
desenvolver
which
capacidades
is
nos
the
servidores
ability to
públicos, nas
develop
pessoas, né,
capacity
as
with the
capacidades
civil
humanas. Se você teria mais
servants,
alguns pontos, né?
human
Esse é um tema que
capacity,
vem
anything
aparecendo
else
nas
that you could
pesquisas, né? Não
add
usar certas
as
tecnologias porque não tem pessoas que saibam lidar
the
com elas.
people
E
who
não só
cannot
na
use a
pesquisa
certain
aqui no Brasil,
technology
já vi isso
because
estudos
they
da
are not
Unesco e outros
prepared for.
que vem
And
sendo
this is
desenvolvidos
not just a
frameworks
matter
para
in
olhar para esse
Brazil,
lado
but
de
there are
desenvolver
other
as
studies
habilidades
from
digitais
UNESCO,
dos
for
funcionários
instance,
públicos, dos
which are
servidores públicos.
developing
Então, se
frameworks to
puder
improve
uma fala
digital
rápida para
ability
complementar
from
dessa
their
fala
civil
anterior, por favor.
servants.
Obrigada, Manuela. Creo que
Thank you,
cada
Manuela.
administración pública tiene que
Each public
determinar cuáles son las
administration
competencias
has to
que
decide
necesita.
about their
Se
required
necesita
competences.
sensibilizar y
If they need
capacitar
to
muchísimo.
sensitize and to capacity,
Acá veo el
wonderful.
rol que tenemos las universidades
The
y
role
todos los
that we
formadores
have at
en
the
asistir al gobierno.
universities,
El gobierno no
which
puede
is to assist the
hacerlo solo.
government, because the government cannot do it by itself. We need to
A
assist
nivel
and support
aspiracional,
them.
porque como
And
dije
from a
antes,
more
cada administración
aspirational
pública tiene sus
perspective,
propios desafíos
as
y sus
each
propias
public administration
fortalezas,
has to cope with
pero sí como
their
algo
own weakness and
referencial, quiero
strengths,
citar
but
el
let me
Government
mention
Digital and Data Profession
government
Capability
digital
Framework
and data
del gobierno
professional
del Reino Unido,
capability
que definió
framework
los
from
distintos
the
perfiles
UK,
dentro de lo que es
who defined what are the different capabilities for the public administration of the UK, such as data architecture, chief data officer, data analyst, data engineer, the governance data manager, the data scientific, and so on and so forth. Regardless, this is a referential mark, and let me exemplify what we did in our university in Argentina. We work with different actors. We co-create a model of a necessary model of competence and national access, which has the Federal Committee for Transparency with 2 representatives from each province in Argentina. And together we defined a data protection of artificial intelligence. The National Institute of Public Administration, we developed a degree for digital government, and we have skilled over 35 civil services from the different levels of the national ministries, and with the Rio Negro University, with the University of the Province of Rio Negro. Now we are working on a titulation for the educational sector to create competences for teachers that are teaching on the elementary school level. Raise awareness, and by awareness I mean not just to create an IT talent, but a talent on data, and also to raise awareness to legislators, public servants, and how they should learn more about that to be able to work as a team as data experts. We also need the technical profiles. Our universities did not create this type of profile, so more and more we see a need for different type of post-graduation courses, specializations, and this is exactly what we are doing. And I am very happy and open to share our experiences and all our programs. Thank you.
Virginia, queria ouvir pouco mais aí de como, né,
Virginia,
as entidades no Uruguai, nas entidades
how
públicas
public Uruguayan institutions are working for more inclusive digital services, especially within these populations that find it more difficult to access digital services.
Brevemente, por favor, eu ficaria muito
Please be brief, please.
Sí, buenísimo.
Of course.
Muy brevemente.
I'll be very brief. As you were saying, we are now on a very reflection stage. We have recent publications which tell us where we have to improve the gaps, low educational level, people who are still working in the rural areas. I would say that these are the main groups that are more in a marginalized level. We have several people working under a very low level, with a low level of vulnerability. We have to monitor their claims, their complaints, what they do, what they don't do, what they document or not. So we are right now in this level of identification. The Uruguayan government has a new officer now, a new policy for continuity. That's how we are checking priorities, strategies as to the next 5 or 10 years ahead. We're taking care of our budgets, and we have to plan new stuff, and these are our priorities for this group of people. One of our priorities is to improve the design and interaction to services. We have an offer of services, we have accessibility, but not all of them with quality. We have a population which is still not able to access that can access internet. We have a strong framework of abilities, skills, capabilities, and competence. We work in collaboration with the whole educational system because it's very important to have this same as part of the educational curriculum. We do need to be aligned to public policies which are being developed. first infancy, children, adolescents, they are our priority in terms of public policies as well as leverage most of those strategies. It's up to us to improve accessibility and their standards. We are doing that technically, but the standards, they have to meet all the requirements. All services, apps, they also have to comply with accessibility, but we are not quite there yet. We have lots of other actions to conduct to get to this final goal, improving the design of interaction, information architecture, and how that information is presented. Technically, it may sound perfect, but not really once we put that into practices. The quality of the image, how that is conveyed to the public, how users are able to understand or not. So those that have a low level of reliability or low literacy as how they express themselves, this is our priority, to work on implementation of a design that can meet our goals. This is our challenge right now, so we can meet a real adoption of a best quality of the services throughout the whole territory. This is our main task right now. And just to close, let me say a few more words, which is fair societies. We have to advocate for fair public policies, and we have to understand how is important everyone's collaborations. Although being you a researcher, an IT person, technician, doesn't matter. How may we influence to improve the quality of life of our users? We are here on an office. People are in our offices building up things and indicators that will improve a better quality of life with much more fairness. You know that we are doing that in Uruguay, and we have a statement as Brazil is now with us, have embarked the same journey as we are in Uruguay. The former president has just passed away, and to build up a more fair society, in my opinion, is the main mission that we have to share here, where everyone will benefit from our efforts and not just a few people. Thank you.
Muito obrigada, Virginia.
Thank you, Virginia.
Segunda pergunta para Leidmar
and my second question to Leidmar is, we expect that the most frequent use of technology based on data will allow services customization, but at the same time, no other project like that, like the risks such as privacy, data protection, security. How do you work this balance to guarantee that risks are minimized?
Perfeito, Manu. E a gente entende que esse é grande desafio.
Yes, indeed. This is a challenge, and to address it, we need to add power to each citizen who are responsible for managing data, and that's exactly what we are doing. I will give you a homework, if you don't mind. You are all invited to visit our port or app e.gov.br to check yourself this experience, where we have privacy already available. There we are able to see which data is being shared or not, in which scenarios have we given a consent, informed consent for that, and privacy, what were the last the past logins with the account, and authorizations that you have given to governmental bodies which are integrated to the Gov.br and make use of our data. This type of mechanism allows more balance and power to citizens to know exactly what part of their personal data is being used by the government and in which situation. This balance is just possible once the whole operation becomes more transparent. In the prior panel, a panelist mentioned that our social data and personal data is being shared. And this is exactly the idea. Each citizen be able to know which data is being gained, to whom have we given consent. Every time that you log in the gov.br, you get lost, you don't know how many authorizations and to what reasons for. So we are improving our gov.br. We have mygov.br with a privacy area and also a postal code in my email box or message box. I have no messages, but this is a channel that we are developing to notify, to give any notifications which are relevant to that specific time, and that will be individualized to each person. My post box, email box is empty, but your might be full. You might be getting a notification of an important public policies. We are also working on better consent mechanisms. A public entity wants to make use of that personal data, wants to notify the person, but with a good consent, and sometimes is not prepared to do that correctly. I also like to mention the platform Hire More Brazil, which allows the hire of micro-entrepreneurs. The platform questions, would you like to be notified about the editals for the recruitment? And then the person decides yes or not. If the person does not want to get notified, it will get no notifications. And this is exactly what we have been doing. So let's get the informed consent to personalize, customize, and to do that with the proper attention and authorizations. This is the best way to balance customization to protection, privacy, and transparency of data use to each one of our citizens. And we are right now doing that, improving all those drivers. Thank you. Last question. Professor Maria Alexandra, you work with you have been addressing the opportunities to use the data which is generated by the society, by the decision-making process, health, emergency, etc., etc. What is your opinion and how do you deal with that? Data produced by the society, how can that be included as part of the digital governance policies and their actions at different levels? Thank you for your question again, Manuela. That's true, but it will apply to the global south. We have data inequalities. We also have a large data changes, but in average, we have abundance of data about some, but not all. Public policies based on evidence or evidence-made public policies. We are developing public policies to those to whom we have data. And there you see the importance to consider on public policies other ways of getting data, especially those that would come from the citizens or from the organized civil society. And there are several questions especially from those who work with the robust methodologies based on scientific information, as we won't have the same level of quality of data as when you have a robust statistical methodology, such as questionnaires, surveys, and so on. But now I'm talking about Brazil because this is the country that I know the best. In a country with the larger dimensions, we lack of microdata, especially related to the territory, to some territories though. And if we are able to develop, and there are methodologies for that, if we are able to develop ways as how people will supply that information, but not only as sensors to use the citizen as if an equipment would be sending us data, but if we have methodologies which will connect citizens to that area of public policies and to their data, we are going to have two effects. First, we'll be able to generate better public policies, as that will allow a better data protection or data coverage. And second, citizens, they may take best decisions to their lives because they had improved their knowledge about that phenomenon. And let me mention again a project which is related to flooding data. And citizens would measure the rain, would inform by an app, and that would feed a data lake. And analysis would be constructed based on official data. On one hand, we had a better coverage from what was taking place locally. But on the other hand, if they're measuring the volume of rain, or if they are checking that in the territory and reporting that information, anytime that he hears that is going to rain 100 mLs and he has collected a number of data information, 5, 10 millimeters, and he knows the consequences of that measurement. When it hears that it will rain 100 millimeters, they will know exactly what are the consequences in their territory. The civil defense is not necessary to ask them to leave home, no, because they don't know what's going to happen. If they were measuring that phenomenon, they know about the phenomenon. The civil defense doesn't need to be called urgently. In addition, it improves the decision and also the public policies. Well, we have time for one question only.
Aqui na frente. Não sei se alguém já está com aqui, né? Desculpa, eu só vi aqui, não sei, talvez mais alguém tenha levantado a mão. Peço desculpa.
Maybe someone else raised their hand. I apologize.
Tá ligado? Estão ouvindo?
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me? Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. First, I have a personal interest, gratitude. A panel just with women is so timely. I am a father of a young lady who is 15, and I'd like to thank you all ladies because you are paving the way to my daughter thanks to your hard work. And I may gather that to Cetic. On behalf of Graziella, who is here, I would like to thank you all, and Cetic, especially Graziella, for the whole support that Cetic has been giving to the Ministry of Communications in the construction of the National Plan for Digital Inclusion. So during the second half of the year, the Brazilian government will involve the whole society within the debates to create a digital inclusion national plan that this time will take into account all the universes which are part of a meaningful connectivity universe. And my question to you is,
é sobre como vocês enxergam ou se já existem assim, casos
or if
que
there are
apontem
any
para
cases indicating
proveito maior do ambiente
a
digital
better use of the
para
digital environment
debates
to
políticos
debate
sociais
for
ativos.
active
Já foi
social
dito aqui
political
nesse mesmo
debate.
painel que o
It has been
brasileiro
said on the same panel that
utiliza as plataformas
Brazilians
digitais de maneira muito
use
intensa e a
digital
gente tem
platforms
visto também que o
intensely,
brasileiro
and we have also
é
been
apaixonado
seeing
na
that
política, né?
Brazilians really
Acho que o
love
envolvimento aí
politics. I think that
ultimamente tem
involvement
demonstrado
more
muita
recently
paixão e às vezes
has
pouco menos de
demonstrated lots
razão.
of passion
E
and
quando a
maybe
gente
not so
pensa
much reason.
em
And
ambiente
when we
digital
think
provocado
of the
pelo governo,
digital
mais do que
environments
o
that
Estado
offered
ou o
by the
governo
government
como
more than the
provedor
state
de
or the
serviços,
government as a
tem o
service
papel do governo
provider,
como
plays the role of
esse
the government
apaziguador social,
as a
como também
social
agente muito
peacemaker
relevante para
or a
direcionar
very relevant
o debate
agent to
público para
direct the
debate
public
saudável e
debate
que respeite a
towards a
democracia.
healthy
Então,
debate
eu
that
queria saber
respects
de
democracy.
vocês como que vocês
So I
enxergam
would like to hear
o
from you
ambiente
how
digital
you see
no
the
setor
digital
público
environment
como
in
uma
the public
alavanca,
sector
como
as a
fator
lever,
de
as
desenvolvimento de
a
ambientes para debates
factor for environment,
políticos
for political debate
ativos da nossa população. A
that
gente aqui
are
no Brasil tem
active in
o
our
exemplo
population.
do
Here in
Participa
Brazil,
Mais,
we have the
mas ele
example
é
of
exemplo
Participa
tipo de
Mais or
participação, eu
more
diria passiva,
participation.
talvez,
Yeah, but this is an
porque
example of
ele
passive
funciona para documentos
participation,
em que o
so to
governo
speak,
está
because it
propondo algo.
works when the
Mas a gente
government is
tem
proposing something.
em todas as
But
diferentes
in
bolhas de
all
comunicação,
differences, bubbles of
debates
communication,
em si
there are
mesmados. E eu
debates
queria
that are
saber como
very
que
much
se existe
towards
essa possibilidade,
themselves.
como o
And
governo
so
pode
is
ajudar
there a
a
possibility? How
furar
can the
essas
government
bolhas e
help
trazer
to
para essa população
pop
nossa
those
um
bubbles
debate
and
aberto
bring the
e
population
positivo?
to an
Obrigado.
open,
Obrigada.
positive
Bom,
debate?
já estamos para as considerações finais. Eu vou
Well,
deixar
we are
começar
headed
quem
towards
quiser, mas
our
eu queria que quem
final
for responder já fazer suas considerações
considerations.
finais e vamos passar aí uma a uma para as considerações finais, um minutinho para cada quem
So, for final
quer
considerations,
começar.
we
Ou com as
have 1
considerações finais, ou
minute
responder também.
Bom, eu posso
or
começar.
to answer.
E o tempo é muito curto. Muito obrigada pela pergunta.
Thank you so much. The
Isso
time
faz
is really
parte,
short.
isso é
Well,
efetivamente
this is part and this is
uma das áreas
effectively
em que nós esperamos que as
one of the
tecnologias
areas
digitais
where
possam
we
ser
believe
usadas.
digital technologies can
Até
help.
porque funcionam como mecanismo de
Also,
crescimento da democracia. E nós bem
because
precisamos
this
disso.
works as a mechanism to foster democracy.
Existem vários exemplos
So
de
there
diferentes
are
tipos de
many
mecanismo,
different
mesmo
examples,
mais
different
participativos, mais
mechanisms.
bidirecionais, como
Some are
mesmo
more
mais dinâmico.
participative, more bidirectional.
Aquilo que é relevante na
And
minha perspectiva
what is
é
relevant from my
que
perspective,
há alguns casos em que essa oportunidade
in
foi
some
aberta, foi
cases when
dada,
the opportunity
e
was clear, was
volto a
open
dizer, em
and
alguns
given,
casos
and
a
I will
resposta e a
repeat,
adoção e a
in
participação
some
não foi
cases the
aquela que
response
era
to
esperada,
participation
com
was
grande
not what
admiração.
was expected, with
Se calhar isso tem que ver
admiration.
com uma razão mais de
So
fundo,
this
não é?
is
Que é
more
precisamente
related to a
essa
deeper
confiança
reason
que
that
existe
is
neste
related
momento,
to
e
the
falando até a
trust
nível mundial, nas
in the
próprias
instrument,
democracias e
even
na
at global
capacidade de eu achar
level,
que
in
sou ouvida
democracy, and in
efetivamente,
the
não é?
capacity
Porque se há
to believe
experiências
that I am
anteriores que se eu dei a
effectively
voz ao
heard.
cidadão,
Because
isso
previous
tive
experience,
discussões
when
mais
you tried
dinâmicas
to use your
com o
voice and more
cidadão,
dynamic
e depois o cidadão
as a
não vê uma
citizen, and then
consequência
citizens do not see any
daquilo que foi a
consequences or
discussão e
any
daquilo que foi o sentido da
feedback
discussão.
on the
Portanto,
discussion and the meaning of
há estes
discussion.
mecanismos, há
So
exemplos
there are
concretos, esse é
mechanisms
um dos
that are
grandes
concrete
objetivos,
examples. This
efetivamente.
is one of the main
É
objectives.
desafio disponibilizar
This
e criar
is a
mecanismos
challenge
desta ordem de
to make
grandeza, então eles
available
falarmos na cidade, eventualmente, até
mechanisms that
mecanismos de
are as
moderação
big as
associados,
this,
etc., para que funcione
so that
da forma devida.
it works
Mas há depois também todo um conjunto de questões culturais
appropriately.
que
But
podem
there are also cultural
justificar
mechanisms
algumas
that may
respostas e algumas
justify
taxas de
a few
participação que não correspondem
responses and
àquelas
some rates
expectativas
of
que nós estávamos à espera.
participation related to the
Somos
expectations
nós
that
acerca
we mentioned
deste
before,
tipo de sistemas para este
related
tipo de
to
discussão.
these types of systems.
Com isto eu termino a minha
So
intervenção.
now
Muito
I
obrigada,
end my
Manuela,
intervention. Thank you so
estou
much,
disponível depois
Manuela,
para falar com
and
qualquer um de vocês
everyone, and I
fora
am
no café
available
ou no
to
final da
talk
sessão.
to anyone
Obrigada.
outside during coffee break or at the end. Thank you.
Pode continuar, Lídia. Agora a ordem é livre.
Obrigada. Thank you very much. Now, trying to talk a little bit about the question, I think this is a big challenge for the government, because when we make a platform available and the platforms for social participation that are available, they are for citizens to contribute towards public policies that we make them available. Even in the assessment of public services, this is a mechanism of participation. We are asking them about public services. But the platform, as you said, is kind of challenging, because when the government makes it available, it's kind of associated to the government, and sometimes citizens seek platforms that have nothing to do with the government, where they feel more free to debate sometimes while they are debating. In government platforms, they think it's related to X or Y government, and they feel limited. But the current government has this concern, and João Brant, he was, I don't know if you're still here, he is a social communication department, have been conducting analysis like that. How can the state and government to use its peacemaking power so that people can manifest themselves in a responsible way, expressing their ideas? This has been a mission of the social communication department. And I can see in our government, whenever there is a platform, it can sometimes be understood like the government using itself for political purposes. So even when we are not making a political statement, we are just working as a state of providing means for communication to take place in a more seamless way, that there is debate. So I think that yes, there is a challenge, and the social communication department has been analyzing. So the digital government has not been operating and I think it's a big challenge of how the state and the government could play that role to make peace. And I agree, Brazilians really like politics and like to have discussions. And I would like to end my participation thanking you very much. And the message is many of the digital solutions, when we talk about Cetic.br, we are very happy about that. But we know there is still a lot to do. It's not a perfect solution. It's not working perfectly. We know it's not. And there is a reality that is different. We think that people are included. And I myself have a very important example. And sometimes the assistive technology for deaf people, which is called Libras, and through technology, and we use artificial intelligence to translate from Portuguese to Libras, we are very happy, but we know that there is part of the community that do not support the tool, that resorts to the public prosecutor, and because we are using a virtual avatar to translate from Portuguese to Libras and not using a human interpreter. And we hear this from deaf people, that the tool is not so good, it's not doing what it was supposed to do. And sometimes we deliver and say, well, I'm happy, everything is fine. If people don't give us feedback in events, when we run an assessment, or when we meet, if you do not manifest yourselves, we don't have any feedback. It's like a bubble. So just as the assessment of satisfaction and Cetic surveys provide relevant numbers, data, it's important for you to manifest yourself whenever possible so that we can have some feedback in order to improve the digital government. Thank you so much. Wants to be the next? Well, 1 minute for me is kind of challenging. I would like to answer your question, and I did lots of research of different ways of digital participation. And I agree that the government opens a question. This is not the free, open channel for people to influence in public policies. And I also agree that this has a lot to do with the trust that is is placed on the government. If the Trump administration opens a channel to talk about immigration, I doubt very much that people will be encouraged or motivated to participate. So when we have a portrait of significant or rather meaningful connectivity, we need to have initiatives considering digital in interaction with in-person tools. More than that, I think that Brazil has 500 good examples of good practices in digital participation tools that can inspire us, but the challenge to me is not that. The challenge is for you to trace the contribution of each person individually and the person being able to see through that tracing how finally their opinion had an impact on a law, public policy, or something, some government action. Brazil did that when we wrote the constitution, and we could have that again. But today, in any digital participation, I go there, give my opinion, and then the government will say 40,000 opinions were sent, but I see no consequences and not what was done with my opinion, suggestion, or contribution. So this seems to be, to me, much more than opening a channel, is being able to see the reflex of what they said in public policies. And as a final take-home message, I would like to thank you very much for the opportunity of these 20 years with you, Manuela. I would like to thank Glaser, Demi, Alexander for this very privileged position of being able to contribute and at the same time enjoy and use the data that you produce. Thank you so much.
Una palabra final.
Just one final word. And I'm not going to repeat myself because we don't have much time. Thank you so much, Alexander, the team, for the invitation. Cetic, it's been a pleasure. I'm taking many thoughts and ideas home. A fantastic interaction in these 2 days of seminars. Congratulations and long live Cetic with many more years of success. No, very briefly, what I said is that I believe it is fundamental. First of all, I would like to praise Cetic, and we also need to look towards the future in terms of the challenges that we have from now on, and to understand the monitoring of information is essential to understand the impact of public policies, and we have challenges to use the registries and assess the impact of AI in everything that is related to cybersecurity and different aspects related to citizen participation, to the participation of citizens. Now we're running studies in Uruguay, both quantitative and qualitative, and digital participation is related to studies and should be related to studies in a design of policies. Digital participation, it's very important to assess and to see if people participate and to use everything that we learn to feed into public policies. And let's wait for the upcoming 20 years of Cetic. And so I would like to thank you all once again for the presence of our guests, for your contributions, and also those who stayed so far, both in person and also through Nick's digital channels. Thank you so much. See you soon. So after sharing such relevant information, we would like to send our gratitude to our guest speakers. Could you please stand at the center to take a picture?
Olá, meu nome é Muriel. Atualmente moro na cidade do Recife, aqui no estado de Pernambuco, no Nordeste. robótica educacional entrou na minha vida quando eu estava no ensino médio, no terceiro ano, e daí me encantei para aquilo e pensei, por que não trabalhar com isso? Hoje em dia eu trabalho com robótica educacional em algumas escolas aqui na cidade do Recife. Não tinha na minha casa internet, tinha na casa da minha madrinha, e daí se eu quisesse baixar um filme ou jogar, eu teria que me deslocar até lá. Acredito que por volta dos 16 a 17, minha família contratou esse serviço de internet, e daí, a partir dessa data, eu tive internet na minha própria casa. A internet ajudou 100%, acredito eu, no descobrimento da tecnologia. Né? Eu comecei a pesquisar aquele material no YouTube, uma plataforma onde existem diversos vídeos de professores e pessoas que têm acesso. Que isso foi uma virada de chave muito importante na minha vida, porque trouxe o interesse ainda maior, ao ponto de eu querer fazer um curso superior voltado para isso e ao ponto de eu trabalhar hoje com isso.
Bom, por fim, o último painel do evento, o painel temático 3, pensando o futuro, tecnologias digitais e impactos ambientais.
Digital technologies and
Este
environmental
painel
impacts.
discutirá como as
This panel will
tecnologias
talk
digitais
about
e as
how
aplicações
digital
baseadas em
technologies
inteligência
and
artificial podem
AI-based
oferecer
applications
ferramentas
can offer
poderosas para a
powerful
ação
tools
contra a mudança global
for
do
the
clima.
action against
O
the global
painel também
climate
pretende abordar a
change. At the
necessidade de
same
medir
time, it
e
is
mitigar
essential
os
to
impactos
measure
climáticos produzidos por
and mitigate
processos de
the
digitalização
climate
e
impacts
pela
produced by
operação de
digitalization
infraestruturas
processes
digitais.
and by the
Para
operation of
moderar o
digital
painel,
infrastructures. To moderate
convido
this
a
panel, I
senhora
would like to
Graziella
give the floor
Castello,
to Ms.
coordenadora de
Graziella
estudos
Castello,
setoriais e
coordinator
métodos
of
qualitativos no
sector-specific
Cetic.br
studies and
do
qualitative methods at
Bem-vinda, senhora Graziella.
Cetic.br. Welcome, Graziella.
E para participar do
And
debate,
to
convido ao
participate on
palco
the
os
debate,
especialistas convidados, senhor Glauco Arbix,
we have
professor
Glauco
titular de
Arbix,
Sociologia da
full
Universidade de
professor
São Paulo,
of sociology in University of São Paulo.
senhor Paulo Artacho, professor titular
Mr.
do
Paulo
Instituto de
Artacho,
Física
full
da
professor
Universidade de São
of the
Paulo,
Institute of Physics of the University of São Paulo,
e o professor Virgílio
and
Almeida,
Professor Virgílio Almeida, Emeritus Professor at the Federal University of Minas Gerais.
Bem-vindos. Passo então a palavra à moderadora e desejo um bom debate a vocês.
So I wish you a good debate.
Tá funcionando. Bom, boa tarde a todos e todas. É um prazer gigantesco estar aqui hoje com vocês para esse último
I
painel.
would like just to be here for the last panel for these two very intense and happy days to celebrate the 20 years of Cetic, to think and rethink what kind of data and what we need to monitor to understand the advances in digital technologies in Brazil and the impacts for our society. I think this is an accomplished mission. It's very difficult. It's a huge pleasure to be here with all these amazing people, experts, people who are really restless about the future of Brazil from different disciplines. We have physics, sociology, and computers, and everyone with the ambition of seeing our country with the better quality for the population, more developed, and with a life with more progress that is more promising for everyone. So I'm kind of making this introduction to say that the last panel of the day was assigned this mission of being slightly bolder and in addressing themes of the future. Let's look into the future, but looking at today. And maybe themes that might be dear and difficult for us. This is a conversation about the environmental dilemma and the new dilemmas or major dilemmas also related to new technologies, especially AI. The environmental issue is not something that Cetic ever worked on. We don't go into that. We produce data in many different industries, but not in this area. But as Cetic, of course, for Brazil, and I apologize for the joke that is not funny. So, environmental agenda is part of our nature, so we need to start thinking about it, and AI is already in our agenda, and Cetic.br is hosting this initiative of the Artificial Intelligence Observatory, co-organized with other partner organizations such as FOIA, SEAD, and others. Related to the Ministry of Science and Technology. So we should look at those agendas. The panel is going to be very provocative. I'm going to agree with you how you're going to play the game. A terrible referee, so don't count on me to do that. But what I want is we have time, not too long. I know that everyone is tired now already, but I'm going to give space to the three of you. We have 10 minutes. I'm very generous. You can take slightly longer in the first round. Our idea here was to have a conversation to Professor Paulo Artacho, super specialist and a great expert in climate sciences, to talk about the challenges that lie before us in the future and how AI has been helping or not. We also have Professor Glauco Arbix, how he sees the future of artificial intelligence, which promises can be fulfilled or not, how we can deal with that. And two things so that we are not too naive, and also to hear Professor Virgilio Almeida in terms of thinking a country that will develop AI in a sovereign, sustainable way, what kinds of governance, what we need to pay attention at, for what is important in this debate. So after the first initial presentation, I will ask Professor Artacho to have the conversation. Professor, I think that the floor is yours. You're free. This is very much based in there's a very strong recommendation to read your paper that you published in late 2024 at the University of São Paulo Journal on Climate Change and AI. He talks a lot about the contributions of AI to improving global climate models, and also in the surveillance of the Amazonian region. Well, starting with something very clear. No one today works on advanced science without using AI, period. This is essential. Just last week, I was in European EU meeting in Vienna, and 70% of the papers used machine learning or AI that is more sophisticated. And the reason for that is that the climate issue and environmental issue have become so complex that no human being can understand the full complexity of everything we need to work on. For example, in the case of the Amazon, today there are satellites with 1 kilometer spatial resolution in an area of 5.5 million square kilometers, with vegetation, plants, greenhouse gas, water, and everything. And then you do a computer modeling about the future of the Amazon. Well, again, then there is along the next 100 years resolutions of 10 per 10 kilometers. No human being can understand a database that is as big as that one. We need and we depend on technologies that are much more advanced than we used to have 5 or 10 years ago. And the future, we are going to use this more and more. This is a trend in science, not just in climate sciences, but this can be a very, very strategic tool for us to understand how what to expect in the climate of the future. The models that we have, the current emissions and commitments of the countries that are going to be revisited in COP30, but not really. We are leading the planet to an average warming of 3 degrees Celsius. And in the case of Brazil, as it is a tropical country with a continental dimensions, we are going to have an increase in temperature between 4 to 4.5 degrees Celsius. This will change our economy profoundly, also with an impact in the health of populations, health of ecosystems, and we need the society to gather all its efforts for us. First, to improve, to think which are the solutions to adapt to this new climate, because the climate has already changed and will continue to change in the future in faster and faster ways, and we need sophisticated tools to deal with a situation that is more or less of a climate emergency that we have. And obviously, science is a fundamental tool to deal with the strategies of the environment and climate, because obviously any policy that is not based on science will be just favoring one side or the other, and then in the end, it's not going to help in any way, which is what has been happening so far. So we are going to have COP30. This is a very important event this year. Science is present at COP30 in a very, very clear way. Climate models are being proved today with very, very extensive use of AI. They are no longer just physical models that solve equations with mass acceleration and everything, to become tools much more powerful than we used to have 10 or 15 years ago. Obviously, you know that the main issue is not the model or artificial intelligence, it's public policies that need to be designed and implemented, but with the improvement of tools that can show us better and more optimized solutions with fewer socioeconomic impacts for the society. This is very, very important. So in the conference that I was last week in Vienna, one of the most interesting aspects that I saw as novelty was this. Until 5 years ago, in the last round of the IPCC model, there are different scenarios of emissions. There are models, they're fixed, and the models run the equations to know what is the climate of the future like based on fixed scenarios. But the society is getting much more dynamic than it used to be 10, 15 years ago. See what's happening in the United States and the significant regional conflicts. So the next phase is to solve equations, not just considering the physical climate, but also socioeconomic and political issues, which are a challenge that you have no idea, and that are strategic if you want to define for each one of COPs reasonably accurate parameters in which are the needs to reduce emissions, where, how, and which are the socioeconomic impacts of those reductions. So in order to do that, AI is paramount and absolutely necessary and strategic, and there are already some very first models that have this approach, and I think that this is going to evolve in the next 5 or 10 years in an extraordinary way. So this is all I wanted to say in the beginning, and then we can continue the discussion.
Obrigada. na expectativa desse avanço e depois de ouvir os desafios também, mas puxando aqui um pouco a primeira fala do professor Artacho, ninguém faz pesquisa avançada sem IA. Você que é um entusiasta da ciência e tecnologia e um estudioso, por favor, professor Glauco, qual que é o futuro da IA na ciência?
About that, Professor, the future of AI, what do you have to say? Especially after Professor's sentence. Well, thank you for being here. I'd like to congratulate Cetic, and I'll try to make an intelligent, smart face because they are very distinguished panelists. I am very optimistic. I am optimistic as to AI, artificial intelligence. I know it's impossible to perform advanced research, not just as to climate changes, ecosystem, environment, health. The 3 Nobel Prize winners are directly related to artificial intelligence and the idea to project proteins. Artificial intelligence has done work which nature took years and years and many, many years to do, and they did in a week. That is a very powerful tool in all areas.
Mas, ao mesmo tempo, eu tenho feito certo esforço para não cair em uma daquelas 2 posições que eu não acho legal.
And I am trying to avoid 2 positions. First, that there is a course, there is a logic, there is a way, and that's fine. You know, some obstacles will be found on the way, but that will be repaired as time goes by. It has always been like that, and like that it will be. And I don't like this position. Nevertheless, the idea to believe that artificial intelligence will be the end of the world to all of us. This is not an announced disaster. Why not? Because it depends on who is making the decisions. We, people. Talking about the future of AI does not mean that we have a fixed future or which derivated from technology. It does not matter if it's going to do the good, the bad. Well, it depends so much on policies of all the constraints that they are going to face, governmental decisions, researchers. And this is the key aspect. We have to keep people in the center of the discussion.
Então, aqui começa certo problema, né? Então, se a gente olha a maneira como
if we see the way as many humans, we human beings, right, decide about AI, we're going to see things which are not so nice. There are some which are so valuable, but there are others which are not. The use of artificial intelligence in wars.
Se você olha para o Oriente Médio, se olha para a guerra da Ucrânia, se você olha para Ruanda, todos
if you look to other countries, Uganda, they all use artificial intelligence in such a way to identify their targets automatically. And in case of a war situation, which is understood to be exceptional, it weighs more than it should. So all effects, they are overcome. In the case of Israel and Putin, over 10 times increased the parameters of decisions that will take people from the final decision to be able to know where the target was. And that is a very unpleasant situation. That is a planned horror which is used on a very powerful technology. But this is not technology problem, this is people problem. In my surveys, I try to do what not always is possible, which is to identify what it is on to technology and not human beings. This imbalance that the humanity lives for a while, that is expressed on the machines, on artificial intelligence. I'm speaking about wars. There are so much to expect in the future. Fires, what may happen with the forests, all of that is true. But today, the damage that the use of artificial intelligence makes to the environment is huge. Amazing electric energy consumption. And I'm not talking about clean energy from the mills. Only in China, there is a great amount of coal mills. That's energy, water, minerals, data centers that consume more sensors, more minerals. So we may improve in the middle to long run. Yes, it can. Google projected that by 2030, emissions would be zero. Microsoft would have not only zero emissions by 2030, but also to have conditions to pay for everything that has issued in terms of carbon. Sun, Apple, all of them changed their goals. And why? Because generative artificial intelligence is consuming so much energy of carbon that was not expected. So no one knows exactly how to calculate the gate of technology. But if we go back to the core of the issue, which is what is specific to technology, if we keep people in our circuit, we might be able to hold a little bit more our environment. In some cases, that's not possible, but we'll be able, we can. The way as artificial intelligence is being developed at different areas, they try to remove human beings from the operations. I just participated in a large international seminar abroad, and the whole discussion is the fashion now. I don't know if the latest, but right now is AHKI. We cannot even translate that to Portuguese, but it's something near to a proactive AI with more autonomy, something like that. I remember when we used to say, well, there is a new position, prompt engineer, but AI does not need a prompt. You give a mission and they do it right away. You say, I'm going to travel to France. They buy your ticket, it books your hotel, it rents your car, it buys the theater tickets. You know, it's amazing. It's science fiction. No, many companies have their own models. And yesterday, the Salesforce, which is a large company, has released its version, billion of US dollars invested, and the goal is to remove people. Once they remove people, I guess that is, it's a turmoil. That's exactly what happens in the workplace. AI may speed up productivity. Can, that is future. Or it is accelerating like a gerund form. Concretely speaking, it's still introducing. Why? Because the goal given is very, very clear. It has to increase productivity based on cutting costs and people. If it's people, if they are cutting people and cutting costs, it's going to be hard to close that equation to believe that it's going to have millions and millions of jobs. That's the difference from the past. In the past, we had a technological explosion and the creation of several other activities, several other ways of working, of important sectors that would overrate that. in the 20th century, that's exactly what happened. But today, no one can say so. No studies prove that they are partial, localized, related to a certain country, and no one may say that they will replicate the past. I wish that would be possible, but no one can say that, especially because artificial intelligence is getting not just in areas where routine jobs are performed, if they get the base of the pyramid that is reaching top up, is getting the cognitive works for the first time in the whole history. In the past, the technology came to improve our capacity, but they did that to a way to replace muscles and part of our neurons. So this novelty let us with the interrogation mark. It's possible to work to make the goods to all and not to few. Those that domain artificial intelligence, few companies, white men, women end up losing so much, let alone black women. We have to see really well what we have. If the current course is not modified, we are not gonna, end up well. It's possible to change. Is it difficult? Very. But the strengths that advocate for this course has a power to convince governments, agencies. The worldwide regulatory framework is so fragile. For generative AI, let alone even more complicated. For this other AI, agentic AI is also based on machine learning, deep learning, the neural networks. It also works based on the black box. Therefore, that is not transparent. It goes crazy now and then, which means that in case of an artificial intelligence with this strong power of autonomy, strong power of autonomy, it means that it may take forward their hallucinations. This is the main difference between agented AI of machine learning and deep learning and generative AI, ChatGPT, Gemini from Google, or Sonnet, iCloud, all the available models which are around. Is it possible to change? Yes, it is. But the governments, they have to have it very clear. Cetic with an inclusive technology, I love what you do, especially for a country like ours. It does not make any sense to have any other type of AIs, because here we have a poor country with a huge inequality and a country that needs jobs and jobs of quality. If we don't have a clear guidance in that direction, we are going to have a predatory way of AI. Is it possible to change? Yes. Are there alternatives? Several. Many experiences which show that it's possible to change. But as I said, it is hard. The public sector has to interfere. Governments, they fear it because they will get in shock with the companies. Universities, the academy does not have strength to do that. And then we end up having a way to, and this technology, which is the most powerful one, will go crazy. If we don't want to have a bad scenario, things they have to start changing, and the sooner the better. It's horrible to have a degovernated AI. If someone establish a dichotomy, which is regulamentations that inhibits competition, creativity, innovation. That's not true. There are no other sector which is more regulated than health, but that's the most innovative one. You have conditions, and that may stimulate and motivate the regulations. As to environment, and human beings sometimes they try to compete with machines. There is a denial wave about climate, and that will also get on us. It's going to be strongly expressed now during COP. If the government will not get ready for COP, we are going to listen a lot. And the COP is a way to avoid the global articulation for climate issues and technology. Is it possible to change? It is, but it's hard. But we have to change. If the current course is kept, it's going to be really bad to us. By technologies, their development, it will suggest and it prescribes medication by itself. It's autonomy. It's a heavy weight. It's a burden. And it tries to, expel humans from the circuit.
Professor Glauco. Bom, da minha parte, eu sempre vou te dar os microfones necessários, com certeza. É bom ouvir o Glauco, porque a gente
It's always very good to hear to Glauco. We get nervous, optimistic, and we want to leave the premises, fighting with everyone.
Dessa ideia sua cara de como a necessidade de manter as pessoas nos circuitos.
So the need to keep people in the circuit of the AI development and how to keep people in this process. I will invite Professor Virgilio to talk a little bit more about AI and governance. Could you please share Professor Virgilio's presentation? Yes, you have the floor. Thank you, Professor.
Bem. Pois é, eu pensei assim, eu vou estar com o Glauco e o Paulo Artacho na mesma mesa. Eles entendem de muitas coisas que eu não entendo.
Well, I have Glauco and Paulo at the same panel. They are, so expert. So I decided to make some slides to feel safer. Jokes aside, congratulations to Cetic.br, CGI, and Nick.br for all your efforts in those past years.
Então, vocês estão de parabéns.
So, congrats.
Tanto o CGI quanto o Nick, né, tem sempre essa
CGI and Nick.br, everything they do wonderfully. Everything is on schedule, but, they always give us some tough skills. We have here the Pope of the climate changes and the Pope of social sciences. Poor me, but anyhow, let's go.
Numa mesa claramente multidisciplinar.
This is a multidisciplinary panel, physics, social sciences, and computer sciences. To find a common denominator is not common, but let's try to find some aspects that are aligned to what Glauco said. So I like to start by reminding Professor Edward Wilson from Harvard. He was a biologist, entomologist, a professor with a multidisciplinary vision. He has worked in Brazil, in the Amazon region, and on a graduation speech, he said the following. We have to evolve to a better global order, better than the one that we have today, which he calls as being Star Wars civilization, which means that you have emotions of the stone era and technology of the goddesses. In case of the religious and ideological institutions, which are under constant conflict, and in case of technology, in 2011, much more before this accelerated expansion. And in case of technology, we see things almost, getting out of our imaginary contest. This is the contest where we are living at. Paulo Artax and Glauco, they are so well positioned. So once I was invited to participate on environmental panel, I said, oh my God, what am I going to do? But I tried.
Disciplinado, deixa eu entender pouquinho mais da situação, né? E eu achei essa interação.
The interaction of AI and society. I found that quite very interesting. We have there three main action pillars, pillars or blocks which may execute things, which are individuals, the society per se, government, and technology companies. And on the top, we have environment, which will depend on all these interactions, some with a more positive impact, others negative. But it's very interesting to see that the thicker arrows, they indicate the velocity of the movements. So we have a society, for instance. It shows their needs and technologies advancements. On the other hand, we have individuals' impact in their work, inequalities, impacts, behaviors. Society interferes to the government and to the public policies due to the obstacles, and the political class try to establish those public policies. There is also a very important interaction between government and companies that are as powerful or maybe more powerful than most governmental agencies, and environmental interaction. Technology companies, they demand their resources, water, energy, rare materials, resources. That is a demand of technology companies, and the impact may be positive or negative. The same applies to governors, which will establish their policies that eventually will benefit the environment or maybe will drive to a negative impact. Petroleum is an example of that in the left margin in the frontier with the Amazon region. And here, individuals, is it really necessary to have all these language models, ChatGPTs, which will generate a significant demand? This whole set, this whole scheme here, let us know about the characteristics that may somehow help us to control and to mitigate the impact, mitigating risks, and eventually offering more possibilities.
A questão é, as tecnologias desenvolvem
are developed much faster than government actions, and the society, until the society is able to perceive all the changes. The velocity disparity between these two phenomena, technology advancements and government actions, they are well represented by an empirical observation made by an English physicist. Physicists, they are always in the forefront. Physicists, they are the bosses, the ones to be respected. Anyway, the phenomena which was named as Collins-Ridge dilemma for AI regulation. This is a dilemma where the situation where it is difficult to control or influence a technology's development. This is the Collins-Ridge dilemma. And Collins-Ridge's key insight was that we can effectively regulate a new technology while it's still in its early stages and less widespread, when its unintended consequences are not yet apparent. In 2012, Facebook had 12 million users, 2 million users in Brazil. It would have been much easier to establish rules to the social platforms. However, at that time, 2012, nobody could forecast what would be the impacts of those social media platforms, let alone let alone to know that they would have a huge impact during elections and controlling voters and so on. Alternatively, those platforms, they have 100 millions of users, where it's almost impossible to establish a new way of governance, especially a governance which will depend on the legislative. We have the fake news bill of law, which was denied, and we still see this, which was approved, but we still see the society very anxious, as we have seen in the film Adolescence, the impact of the networks and how that will affect the youth. The goal is to find exactly where a point in the curve where some sort of regulation will be possible. Is that the right time to regulate AI? Is it possible to do it? So, the Colin Bridge dilemma is around global discussions as the regulation of emergent technologies. Paulo Artacho is an expert, and he says AI has an environmental problem. Here it is, what the world can do about that. We have to think how can we align AI to a sustainability in Brazil? This is the core of the question. And I understand that there are 4 axes where this alignment may take place, which are on scientific research, on development of technologies, governance, and public policies making. These are the 4 pillars that we in Brazil, as a society or as a government, we should have to work to improve alignment. Computational speaking, alignment is so hard, taking into account human values, which are still opening questions which are being discussed on any AI conference. Research, scientific research is very important, and we should have that in Brazil. First, because whatever comes from abroad does not apply here, does not apply to our environment, does not apply to our country, because inequalities are many. So to replicate exactly what happens over there, like AI of agents that Glauco has mentioned, is that really what we have to have over here, this type of technology? There is this Manus, which is a new Chinese agent with all features. Prepare, book my trip to the countryside of Minas Gerais state. I'm not going to say prepare a tour to Europe, and they are joking that the place where he wants AI to prepare the trip is a small place. Anyway, they have to, get in touch with travel agencies, but they have also to open data for a booking. They're going to book on my name. So there is all a question of privacy and safety. We do not have a framework yet which may guarantee and preserve it. I would recommend you to visit my city. Coffee, nice cheesy, corn cake, just wonderful stuff, you know. Come and visit us. So it's not just
Elas não batem. Vamos ver, vou fazer alguns pontos aqui. Vamos lá.
just a second, let me address here some research challenges. Which ones the research community should go after? In fact, we have wonderful students working on AI, computational work, but our production is still very small. I'll give you an example. Brito shared a very interesting chart from Springer, where there is a classification of all published articles with the word artificial intelligence or machine learning in the title or in the abstracts.
Brazil in 2013 was the 13th or 14th in the ranking of these countries. In 2023, it went to the 30th position. So we need to have investments, to invest in people to do these things. Because Glauco is here because he knows how we are going to get the money, because he can talk to FINEP to get the funds. So which are the challenges? Well, number one, it is to try and develop AI systems that will minimize the requirements in terms of water and computer resources. So there was a DeepSeek paper on that. So there are examples. Do we need large language models or small language models would solve certain problems? So the first research theme would be this. The other one would be develop innovative AI applications that will lead to changes, not epistemic changes, but changes in the analysis of sustainability. And number three would be precisely, as Paulo started saying, robust scenario modeling and data collection efforts to inform policy making, which is hard, politicians and decision makers to design policies. So these are very complex issues, and we can no longer just think. We need evidence. We need to suggest public policies that are evidence-based. So these are, for example, important lines for the country to invest. And it's fundamental for us to invest in people. So if you're going to need big machines, well, that's something else. But we need people, first of all, and to have some governance mechanism. So a mechanism that has a collective action over society. So the idea of governance so effective governance and technological development are not mutually exclusive. They can be aligned. They can be aligned to create safer environments that are more sustainable, trusted, and more beneficial for the use. But we don't have anything. So which are the rules? So there is a proposal to be discussed in the Congress. So one thing that I would like to call your attention to, so one essential thing for the governance of the Global South is to address the profound implications of the dissemination and distribution of AI in context marked by profound economic and social inequalities. And I would like to draw your attention to this small sentence here. We need to have limits, but to have limits, we need technologies to audit these corporations, but we do not have that yet. So a few thoughts and a few ideas to close. One interesting point, and also making a relationship with what everyone has said, the negative impacts with the advance of AI are not just related to the issue of overconsumption of electric power, water, but they have the capacity of doing something that has a perverse effect, which is to change the minds of people. Information will be more and more generated automatically based on large language models, and the information is that search engines provide to people, social network take to people, and they're going to define what people think. So these are some ideas for us to think about. We need proactive governance and targeted research, and also cross-sector collaboration. Physical, in person. Well, we wonder, but multidisciplinary collaboration that can be analyzed to deal with climate issues, precisely what we need to minimize sustainability risks. To ensure positive outcomes, it is essential for the AI research community to engage early with policymakers and civil society. So to inform the government and politicians about what is going on and what's happening, and to inform civil society too. To include with perspectives from social scientists, people working with ethics, policymakers, and to create the idea of responsible AI. And another point, and they also said, AI is not just technology, but it is a societal transforming force that transforms culture, economy, environment, that requires integrated approaches. It's not computer people who are going to solve it alone, not the physicists, or not social science professionals. And lastly, we need to have intelligent tools that will enable the collaboration between AI researchers and experts from diverse fields. This is what we need to build in Brazil. Just out of curiosity, I talked about misinformation. This is going to be very important in COP30. The boys and girls who work with me, the undergrad students, they ask the following questions. Which opinions do large language models present about the climate change? And they did the following experiment. They used 8 different language models and using a survey that is every year published by the UN with the answers from more than 50 countries. And they put the language models to answer the survey and to compare human answers with non-human answers. And to see which were the biases. So language models show higher levels of concern about the climate change than the average person. And then they also did a very interesting experiment. And then that's why prompts, this was based on prompting. Answer as if you were a citizen of this place. And then this also changed the answer. And then the answers of humans are different from the answers to the survey that were asked by the machine. So the thing of government action and concern with the future generations, this is where there is the biggest misalignment or disagreement. So if you ask on a conference, and here it shows the countries where it happens, this is the level of discrepancy between human and machine answers. So why is this important? So search engines will seek information in the language models. Social network too. So the power to disseminate ideas is really significant. And that was it. Thank you.
Muito obrigada, professor Virgílio.
Thank you so much, Professor Virgílio. If this is difficult for you, what about me? Well, I am also going to take the opportunity. We have a few minutes left. It was good, the importance of the organizations. And to me, nothing was better than debate to invest in our intellectual development. So I'm going to open for a round of questions. Two lucky ones will have the right to ask a question, and then we will open for the three of you to make comments and answer, and for your closing remarks. Please.
Meu nome é Sérgio.
My name is Sergio.
Eletrônico.
I am an electronic engineer, newly retired. I'm going to take something of what our Harvard colleague said about Cornbridge. I think this is a good idea. But
como engenheiro e
as an engineer,
observador, né? Eu gosto de fazer análise.
Observer, I like to make direct analysis of situations. There is one thing that worries me. How can we use a good idea, Collinbridge, in governments such as North Korea? Well, difficult. Here in Brazil, well, maybe we might be able to do something outside Brazil and in other places, and even in Brazil. It will depend on who is in the government. So humans are the center of everything, regardless of technology. And I think that we are past this curve. So either we take very severe measures or we are going to lose the battle. I'm not someone who hates technology. I love technology. I live technology. Just to talk about technology, I have goosebumps. But the problem are people. We need to mature and to grow a lot before technologies. And I was afraid of the sociologists because I'm not really in favor of sociologists. But I really liked what you said, okay? So you're really down to earth. So we need to think about more practical thing. We need to be grounded, to be down to earth. Thank you. Hello, I am Marianne. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask the opposite. I don't want you to be down to earth. I would to ask you, what would be the ideal world? What would be the ideal in terms of generative AI, human beings, environment? Thank you so much. Well, now let's see. So now I'm going to let each one of you answer and make your closing remarks. Professor Artacho. I'm going to leave Glauco to answer your question because he has thought a lot about that. Well, but this is it. We are, as a planet, going through a very, very important period of our history. We are going through a transition. Transition to what we don't know. But humankind has gone through many transitions, industrial revolution, and now new technologies and climate change are the path towards a new transition. Problem is, how are we going to do that? And how can we make this transition be as harmful as, or the least harmful possible. So we have millions and millions of losers and just a few winners. It's going to be the same. So I think that one of the points as a lay person in AI, one thing that worries me a lot is control. So basically, 5 or 6 billionaires, usually American, they control all technologies on which 7 billion people depend in our planet. So this is a concern that is fundamental. So the thing of democratization of this kind of knowledge of control is absolutely strategic. This is applicable to every area. In my area, in climate change, look, what we are going to decide on this decade is going to be the trajectory that we are going to follow for the rest of the century. Will we be able to reduce the emission of greenhouse gas and to control the increase of temperature, or to limit it to 2.5, or no one is going to do anything and we are going to go to 4.5 degrees in terms of the change of the temperature? Who is going to decide which trajectory humankind is going to follow? Is it Elon Musk? Is it Mark Zuckerberg? Or is society as a whole? This question is very important. For now, the answer is going to be given by 10 or 12 people, and we need to change that scenario as we discussed here. But this issue is absolutely fundamental and paramount, and those who need to take part in the decision is also regular, ordinary people, and how to do this in a way that is democratic, fair, is a huge, gigantic challenge, maybe even bigger than implementing AI. This is related to inequality, this is related to the future of humankind as a whole. So we're going through a very critical time to transition of a new state of our humankind that I hope will be much more sustainable the last 30, 40 years, also because we have no other alternatives other than following the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and to effectively build a fairer society that is minimally sustainable with the help of artificial intelligence, since obviously there's no going back. So I think that this is our main challenge. So the thing of democratization and who decides which way to go and which path our society is going to follow is fundamental. And I really agree with Virgilio that it is a disaster for Brazil to go back in attempting in the attempts of regulation, minimal regulation. We're far from having a democratic decision-making process of how we are going to regulate social network, AI, and everything else. But without action of the government that is minimally possible, and without this action having any control in terms of improvement of our democratic instruments, we are going to have very serious problems, both in implementation of the domain of technology. And this is going to have consequences in health, diet, climate change, and so on and so forth.
Por favor.
Please.
Well,
look,
relacionada a futuro tem muito a
every
ver com as
question
decisões
about the future is very much related to the decisions that we are making now. We, I mean, we have a very small power individually, but there are governments, organizations that are strong. There is no homogeneity in the world, especially in the world we are living. And so there is no homogeneity for us to define clear lines, and everyone is experiencing major uncertainty, even greater than the uncertainty that we should or deserve to experience. Any change always carries uncertainty. But I think that the lack of future lines defined by those who hold power are leaving many decisions in the hands of very few people, and we can't always keep up and see which are the decisions that are being made. There is no transparency. No one asks us any questions. So there are smart toys platforms, toys that have problems because the children use, it's filmed, the films end up going to a social network, predators take advantage. No children was consulted, neither the parents, no one. So today there are processes that are marked by the exclusion of people who are the ones who benefit the most or are affected the most by AI. So here the idea, and I agree with Virgilio, the idea of you having forms of cooperation, involvement of society, this is fundamental for us. It's not just a problem of governments of major organizations. University is like that. If you ask our colleagues, maybe at UFMG, but at University of São Paulo, you ask your colleagues, my friends, you hardly ever will see a participative process to come to generate solutions. Usually solutions come from engineers because they have the competence, or comes from mathematicians, physicists, statisticians, people who are there. So this thing of participation is super important because this is what could define and direct the course of technologies. I am very much worried, and I was just talking about this. I'm very worried about the job market. Well, AI can help in many 500 areas, but to be very harmful to other areas. But the job market is a huge, huge problem because the way it's going, the appeal of cutting costs, cutting people that will have an impact on competitiveness of companies. So it deals with the wallet of those who have companies, those who work. Just take a look. Today, many unions that traditionally in the US were democratic are supporting Trump because they think that the protectionist policy will generate jobs and companies are going to come back when the world spent the last 30 years globalizing, building global value chains, and just out of magic overnight, you just put a factory there, it's going to work. Well, it won't. There will be a problem. Well, they're having problems already. So the job market is a huge problem because in addition to the pressure of lobbies, there's also the problem of competitiveness. This is a very, very strong appeal of having the economy in the short and long term. I really like the discussion about the environment, climate. I really like the issue of education and health. These are the main three areas because, believe it or not, except for health, they are the areas that receive the least global investment for the development of technology. Health, not so much, because health is a machine of making money with big pharma. But in the environmental area, the likelihood is to go down. I am come here, I am the president of the biggest country in the world, and I encourage drilling oil, depleting everything and all barriers. Well, naturally, we do not have any incentives to think. Not a green economy, a sustainable economy. This is very difficult. But look, these areas are underinvested. Education, amazing. Even health. I did recent work on that. Well, there is in the pharmaceutical, of course, there's huge investments because medications provide return. Well, what about Ozempic? That changed the economy of Denmark. So it's changing the world. starting from our tummies. So if we look at investment in occupations that are less qualified in health, investment is zero. And you could have many more jobs, adding jobs so that AI would complement the work of nurses, medication distribution, control if the patient is complying or not, is taking the medication or not. So it's the same thing. And then there are centers that generate jobs. And it's not us that make the decisions where it's going to go, because billions are being invested in agentic AI, which is excluding people. So the job market is a problem all over the world. Is there an alternative? So there's last year's Nobel Prize, Ocemoglu. So we need to change the course, because the job market is not just anything. It touches our survival. And this is where the damage can be the greatest. And the worst is that there are alternatives. So companies do not know beforehand which is the most appropriate technology for their products. Sometimes they try to discover where they're going, just sticking out their fingers to the wind. And so there is a huge impact on the lives of those working, because people are outside the market because of decisions that are made in a room. There are no situations today discussing all of this. Companies do not make the decision to include heavy technology systems overnight. It takes 2, 3, 4 years. But there is no concern whatsoever to make them prepare. I want to introduce this technology. We are going to cut the workforce by 20%. Well, do you know about this? In 4 years, you need to start preparing, teaching them courses. Doesn't mean that they're going to have a job, but at least they are going to be more likely to face the transition. Nothing of this is discussed, neither by more conservative governments and neither by more progressive governments. And the job market, to me, is the main enigma of artificial intelligence. It was not like this in the past with electricity. It was not like that. There were problems. It took 30 years for factories to incorporate electricity. And then there was the 20th century, but today it's getting doctors, lawyers, journalists, sociologists, computer scientists. I can code. I'm not a coder, but with ChatGPT, I can code it. We'll go wrong, but I can do that. So my job's not, but your job is at risk. Well, actually, the one with assured work is Paulo, you know, physicists, you know. Physicists are always behind everything. So there is a problem. The job market is a huge problem. And I think that the governments that have any intention of being progressive and thinking about society have the obligation of opening the debate in a very intense way, starting in Brazil, because we can pay a high price. In 20 years' time, as you asked your question, we can be in a very difficult situation with no water, no coffee, because everybody will be unemployed. Not even the rug will be here. You can have a red carpet here, right, to remind us of the Oscar award ceremony. I think that this is the key issue. This is the most important. This is where the impact of technologies will be felt for better or for worse. There are others. Democracy, fake news, misinformation. Everything is deadly, but the job market regards survival. And those working and the companies that will be very happy if they have layoffs, cost cuts to increase productivity and competitivity. So they're very contradictory tensions, and that's why they're difficult. It's not that we don't know the way out. It's very difficult because there are very contradictory movements, opposing movements. The pressure for my company to succeed. So they suggest cuts, will replace people, will cut costs. And at the same time, we need to keep it so that we can save our jobs. Very well, we're still here. Thank you very much, Professor.
Professor Virgílio, suas considerações.
Eu acho que tanto o Paulo Artacho quanto o Glauco já falaram as questões chaves.
Professor Virgílio, please. Well, I think my colleagues have already addressed almost everything. Let me just add one more thing. The importance of involving the society and to get a society's participation within the numbers, we should have some literacy program to the society. The society must know what's going on, at least on a beginner level, and that does not happen. Also, we have to include participation and literacy of the unions, but unfortunately, that's so difficult. Even within the universities and the academy, there are just a few people who will talk about that. Others will just not pay attention or care about that. So a literacy program would be very important, but to talk to a head professor that literacy is required, we are going to be, sent away. But literacy is key, in my opinion. Brazil should be investing on research, not only on computational technologies, but also in the AI relationships with the environment, with social matters, and we are not investing on that. FAPESP is doing some sort of efforts on that direction, but not enough. We should have more researchers to avoid absorbing without any representation of the Brazilian reality to new technologies, which is the case of AI agents and several others where we do not know what they are, and they are absorbed by the power of the large corporations, by the power of publicity, all of that. So if I could suggest anything, I would say, is it necessary to expand knowledge at different levels to have participation? I remember my experience at CGI for many years. The civil society would give us really good opinions. The civil society was a sort for important suggestions and recommendations, and we do need to recover that to get this for AI as well. But don't get too pessimistic. These guys, they are too pessimistic. Come on. Talking to a professor who is older than me at the university, he told me, I've seen already 8 popes, several conflicts, things they get solved. Come on, let's not be so straightforward like that, but we have to look and find solutions, and we will. Thank you. With that, I'd like to close this panel, and I couldn't thank you three enough for the enrichment to listen to you in such a very important day when we are celebrating 20 years of Cetic. Don't run away, we still have some housekeeping messages, and thank you so much for everyone who had stuck with us so far. That's it. Thank you so much for the excellent debate. Please come up to the front of the stage to take a photograph, and we are going to go now for the closing remarks. Thank you.
Muito obrigada.
Thank you.
Para proferir as palavras de encerramento do seminário, convido ao palco o senhor
I'd like now
Alexandre
to invite
Barbosa,
Mr. Barbosa, who is Cetic.br manager.
Prometo que vou ser bem breve.
I promise that I will be very fast. What a privilege. 2 days of very intense work, 48 speakers, 10 countries. It's a privilege. What a privilege. And I am so moved because we had 2 days of so much reflection, which allows us to get enough work to the next 10, 20, 30 years. But we don't have time for that. We have to try to understand the phenomena. The AI stuff was not in our agenda. We were dropped into that problem to measure and to generate knowledge, data, evidences. But I would like to get the last words of our 3 speakers. Dr. Virgilio has mentioned the society participations. NIC and CGI, both institutions that represent the governance of internet in Brazil. In the past 30 years of CGI, we have generated amazing results to the Brazilian society. And yesterday I have mentioned that this dialogue that takes place within this level of engagement of society, where we are after a consensus, a common point, it drives amazing results. And Cetic is one of those results. Cetic was created by a decision of those players of the civil society, of the government. And this model, to keep on driving good results, it needs to be preserved and kept. It could be improved, but above all, kept. And we are now at the end of this international seminar celebrating 20 years of Cetic. We had 2 days full of insights, debates, discussions, which had enriched us so much. Not only us, those who produce and developed data at nic.br via Cetic, but every one of you who are here in this audience today. We have had organizations, experts, subjects, representatives of the civil society. I mean, anyone who is somehow involved to the work that Cetic performs. We have discussed about challenges and possibilities of a more inclusive and ethical future of internet and the technology as a whole. So the role that NIC and CGI had embraced to produce data, to generate analysis and evidence is essential, and it will be essential and relevant to the future. Some of you didn't have a chance to come yesterday, and others who spent the 2 full days. But anyhow, everything that we heard throughout these 2 days addressing the Cetic's trajectory, where social inclusion, meaningful connectivity, that was a so interesting debate, and the topic of meaningful connectivity was repeated at other panels, such as digital health with the AI, emergent technologies. How are they transforming the service rendering in health, in education? We had another very interesting panel with Professor Livingstone about well-being of children and adolescents in the digital environment, digital economy. Today, information integrity in the era of AI was very up to date and so much necessary to our society. Digital transformation in the public sector, evaluating emerging technologies which are remodeling the public administration and services offered to our citizens. And this brilliant panel to close our 2 days of activities. We couldn't be more fortunate to have these 3 gentlemen here with us today to really, draw our attention to a very emergent problem. How are the players acting? How is the population behaving? And several other dimensions related to this problematic. And Nick and CGI may help a lot in the analysis and in the production of evidences. With that, once again, I would like to thank Nick.br and CGI.br to keep on going with this commitment to produce data, evidences, and analysis. And I would like to make a collective thanking to the departments that were essential, starting from the communication department, events and communication department. You were perfect. You were amazing. You did a great job. And thanks also to your organizations. Here we are, the several receptionists. I did not see one of them that were not smiling, trying to be helpful and, speak English with our foreigners. Thank you so much to all the receptionists that were ever so kind. The interpreters, English, Portuguese, and Spanish, and sign language, who are here with us today, working remotely. Everyone is remotely. No interpreters are in the room. They are all working from their own offices, and they did an amazing job. To the whole team of audio and sound, I was here on Monday night to check if everything was fine. I couldn't believe the amount of equipment that they bring to allow all the audio and visual performances. So congratulations. And the whole logistic support that we had from Unimed Theatre, a very skilled and competent team of workers, and my sincere gratitude to all of you. And to you participants who are here who have been here for 2 days, 2 long days. Congratulations and thank you so much for your presence, for your presence and participation, of course. And also a special thanks from the bottom of my heart to all speakers, moderators, institutional partners that came a long way. Some of you came from Africa, Europe, several other Latin American countries, the United States of America. I cannot thank you enough to show the level of generosity and gratitude that you had all shown and given to us. And to everyone who was here on site or online, the online presence and participation was very active in the YouTube, and your collaboration contribution was key to enlightening our 20 years celebration, which is very special and dear to us. And, this is the sense of existence of Cetic.br. With that, we are officially closing the seminar, being pretty sure that all the debates and discussions conducted here will strengthen even more our commitment, Nick.br, CGI, and Cetic.br, to produce quality data of quality and a production of information society more fair, ethical, inclusive, and sustainable. Thank you so much and have a wonderful evening. Goodbye.